The Newsroom, hello and welcome once again from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name is Vuwani and Uganda, and this show is always live and broadcast from our studios right here in Auckland Park between 9 and 12 every weekday morning. We're also live on YouTube through our streaming facility there, so you can watch us back on demand there whenever you want. Of course, today, an interesting question we're asking. It's caused quite a stir here in South Africa in the last 24 hours. What are your thoughts on 90% local music being played on all, I must tell you that, on all 18 SABC radio stations? That's what we'd like to hear from you. Some say it's a fantastic move for local musicians, and great news. Everyone will now share in the benefits. What do you think about this move? Is it possible? We'll wait and see how it goes over the next couple of weeks. First though, let's go to Elvis for a news update.
Egypt has toppled South Africa in the second position as the second largest economy on the African continent. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni will be inaugurated today after winning the elections in February, allowing him to extend his rule to 35 years. And government expected to continue to meet with various villagers in Vuwani in an effort to stabilize the situation. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makavate what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning to you, Kendall.
Elvis, good morning, and good morning to you as well, Evan. It's been a very interesting morning so far. Howdy, good morning to everybody at home as well. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. In the Premier Soccer League, Ducks hit rock bottom with a draw 2-2 with Vuwani City. Novak Djokovic struggles against qualifier Stefan Robert, finally beating him in 2 sets to reach the third round of the Italian Open.
Tokyo!
Japan says Tokyo's campaign to host the 2020 Olympics was clean, denying media reports of a 1.5 million. That is what we've got for you in the sports later on. We'll also be chatting to Shona Hendricks from the High Performance Center about the preparations for the Olympics. Be sure to stick around for that about 10:20 or so. Back to the main desk for the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. Government has arranged a series of meetings in and around Vuwani in Limpopo to end the protests that led to the burning and vandalizing of 24 schools. Security Minister David Mashlobo has been meeting various stakeholders in the area.
Mashlobo and the SAPS penetrated the volatile areas to remove barricades. This is where 13 schools were burnt down last week. Police have been monitoring the area since. Mashlobo says more arrests will be made.
We will not hesitate to take tougher action, but they need to come around the table so that their concerns can be heard.
Police used rubber bullets to disperse protesters who blockaded the roads. Vehicles passing through Vuwani were under heavy police escort.
There are ongoing engagements with the king and the president, so we are still waiting for the response, which will come from the king and the senior traditional leaders to tell their people what is it that transpired from the outcomes of the meeting.
The ANC has called for calm and assured that all those involved in the burning of schools will not escape arrest.
Some of the people who are arrested are members of the ANC. They will not have the organization's protection. The burning of a school is an unforgivable act.
A series of meetings have been arranged with various communities in the area. Schooling has been disrupted since last week. Most villages remain barricaded and trenches have been dug to prevent free movement.
Egypt has replaced South Africa as the second largest economy on the continent. The IMF World Economic Outlook has blamed the weakening rand here in South Africa for the demotion. The average value of the rand depreciated by 50% between 2012 and 2015, while Egypt's currency rose over the same period. Now, this means that when translated into dollars, Egypt's economy is larger. Auditing firm KPMG says that South Africa's fall to second place among the continent's giants is a concern. Now, it adds that South Africa's economy should be growing at the rate of at least 5%, and at the moment it's bordering at around 0.5%. KPMG says this is a way of where the country needs to be. Now, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni will be inaugurated today for a 5th term. The 71-year-old was declared winner of the election in February with 60% of the vote, allowing him to extend his rule to 35 years. President Jacob Zuma will be among the heads of state attending the swearing-in ceremony. Meanwhile, Ugandan police have arrested the opposition leader Kizza Besigye, who has rejected the election results, citing alleged rigging and other irregularities.
Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni will take the oath for a 6th time since capturing power 30 years ago.
It is the end of the old government, the old leader, and also ushering in a new leader, a new president, and a new government.
South African President Jacob Zuma is in Uganda to join other heads of state who are attending. Uganda's government expects up to 300,000 people to gather at the Kololo main grounds. Security is on high alert. The stage is set and security is well in place as President Yoweri Museveni prepares to be sworn in on Thursday. The ceremony here will mark the start of another 5-year term, one that is expected to be of major economic and social transformation. Leading opposition party, the Forum for Democratic Change, disputes the election results and plan to hold countrywide protests. Leon Sanyange, SABC News, Kampala.
Now, in the music industry, they say, let the music play. All 18 of SABC's radio stations will play 90% local music as of today. That decision was made after consultation with stakeholders in the music industry.
A consultative meeting with stakeholders in the industry. They aim to find a way to improve and support local content.
We depend on you. And the day I'm going to enjoy my life is when I see all African languages are catered for in all these platforms.
A move supported by many in the industry. Today, another milestone. The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC, will implement 90% of local music across the 18 radio stations.
We have been meeting all stakeholders. We are not just focusing on the artist. We are focusing on local content. And we are appealing to all independent producers, emerging producers, to cooperate with SABC and assist the SABC to refresh its content. We are saying this is South Africa. We are prepared to work with you. So it is an exciting time for the SABC. All our radio stations, 18 radio stations, will be playing local content. Our television platform, they will also reflect local content.
The music to be played will be across all genres. In addition, the SABC will play more music from legends in the industry as well as up-and-coming artists.
SABC says its decision to play 90% local music on its 18 radio stations starting today won't affect the format of its commercial stations such as 5FM and Metro FM. Now, you can also send us your comments on the question that we pose to you. Of course, that question is, what do you make of that, the 90% of music being played on our station? Let me take a look at some of your comments. Here from Kolisi says, so what will Metro on a Sunday play with this 90% thing now? It's not a thing, Kolisi. It is music. That's the thing. It's not like we have the OJs or Manhattans of South Africa. Well, we do. If you listen carefully to some of the local music, there are some of those here. Orient says, South African music is dope for the most part, but again, 90%, bro, Question mark there from Orion. That's too much for anyone's soul. Well, you just heard there, especially for the ones that is worried about the Metro FM, that won't affect that. Now, 90% of South Africa's music on radio just means that we'll hear new artists of which 90% of their work is not heard. So very beyond voicey there. Zanele Susha says, congrats, South Africa. Finally, South Africa is South African after all. 90% South African music. Hashtag SABC. Hashtag love SA. Well, I'd like to get your thoughts on the Facebook page as well as on the Twitter handle of SABC Newsroom in terms of what you think about that. That's the question that we pose to you today. What are your thoughts on 90% of local music being played on all SABC radio stations? Let us know what's on your mind, but right now it's time to start our theme for the day, and that theme,
yes,
we have a lot to talk about here. But
very concerning number, but I must say my thoughts on the music thing. I think it's wonderful for local music, wonderful for local artists. Finally, our artists will get paid. I think that's the good news. But we've got some serious business here on hand, Elvis. Let's get straight into it. Of course, now our Minister Aaron Matsoleri is standing by in our Polokwane studio. But first, I want to set the scene here. The story that's concerned, the number of women bleeding to death as a result of a cesarean section is a national emergency right now. The information was published in this month's edition of the South African Medical Journal. Published figures show a 63% increase in such deaths. That's between 2008 and 2014. And in 71% of instances, the deaths could have been avoided. The numbers don't lie. Among the authors of the journal, or the article in the journal, are members of the National Committee on Confidential Inquiries into Maternal Deaths, which was convened by South Africa's Health Department. Now, to talk to us a little bit more about the article, about the number of women dying from cesarean section, we are now joined by Professor Sue Forkus from the University of Cape Town, who I mentioned is also one of the authors. A very good morning to you, Professor. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Ivan.
Professor, the number of deaths from cesarean sections, do you consider it a national emergency today?
Yes, we're very concerned about it. I mean, cesarean section is an operation designed to improve the outcome of mothers and their babies. And there are lots of interventions that can actually make sure it's a safe operation. And so we're very alarmed when we note the increasing numbers of women who die from bleeding at or after the cesarean section. And we see it as an area of great concern that needs to be tackled.
Why do we see so many women today compared to yesterday having cesarean sections? Is there a financial element to this?
Not in the public sector. I think it's partly driven in the public sector by need. A cesarean section can sometimes prevent the baby being born brain damaged or the baby dying. But unfortunately, sometimes the cesarean sections are done and they're not necessary. And that's partly because the skill of midwives and some doctors to provide normal birth or assist the birth if it becomes complicated vaginally has diminished. And also I think litigation can sometimes drive high cesarean section rates.
Are you concerned that there could be medical practitioners who are in a way pressuring women to have cesareans when they could have normal birth?
No, I don't. Not in the public sector. I don't think. I think in the public sector, still the ethos is to try and achieve vaginal delivery. However, I think that some of the skills to, for example, assist the birth if it becomes delayed right at the end of labour with instruments has been lost. And I think there's a lot of anxiety with young doctors about the possibility of the baby being born sort of brain damaged. So I think those kind of things are what's driving it. I don't think it's a financial thing in the public sector.
Why do you then think there's this increase in fatalities?
Well, I think it's partly because there are more caesars being done. I think partly that some of the caesarean sections are more complicated. Once you do a woman's second caesarean section or third, it's associated with more bleeding. Also, when you do a caesarean section late in labour, it's associated with more bleeding. And I think what we are most concerned about is at district hospitals, where most of the caesarean sections are done, they're done by the least experienced doctors, either doing the surgery or giving the anaesthetic. And we've failed once trying to improve access to caesarean sections by them being done at the districts, but the skill isn't always up to what is needed to ensure a safe outcome.
You have no concerns over things like medical negligence in this instance at all?
I think the concern is lack of skills, that one actually has trained people often to do a caesarean section, but whether they can then deal with the complicated caesarean section and whether they have enough supplies, such as the sort of blood that needs to be available, the drugs in right doses to contract the uterus, transport if they run into trouble. I think these are all it's a kind of health systems issues which I think need to be addressed. And I think it's more that than sort of straight negligence.
If I had to ask you for the roadmap to stop this, how do we go about putting matters in place in order to arrest this and maybe turn it around?
It's very important, and we're sort of really working hard on looking at strategies. There have been some things already done in South Africa which have made a difference, and I'll talk about some of those. But first, I think it's important to make sure that unnecessary caesarean sections aren't done, and to improve the skills of both midwives and doctors in normal birth. The second, I think, is a massive improvement of skills is necessary. And we know in some districts in South Africa where they've launched a training program called ESMO, which is a really focused training for skills, they've reduced deaths from bleeding by about 20%. Now, if we could roll that out everywhere to every district, that would make a difference. The other thing I think which is important is ensuring that every facility that's offering caesarean sections meets the minimum standards. So, for example, there are 2 doctors in the theatre. There mustn't be 1 doctor doing the anaesthetic and doing the caesarean section. There must be enough blood in the fridge. There must be enough drugs. And I think there needs to be an accreditation of these facilities. And what they've done in the Free State was, rather than having many district hospitals doing caesarean sections, they've selected a few that can do them safely, and the other ones then have emergency transport on site to take them to somewhere that can do it safely. And thirdly, there are now in South Africa what are called district clinical specialist teams. And these are teams, people working at district level, and they've got a really important role, I think, to ensure safe facilities, trained surgeons, and also to keep monitoring it. Our reports, which are in the SAMJ, they come out every year, but you almost need real-time investigation. So each month, a particular facility monitors how many women bleed at caesarean section. So immediately the problems can be identified and tackled. The other, I think, important thing, in the Western Cape has a lower amount of deaths from bleeding associated with caesarean section. And they've got a good system of the regional hospitals supporting the district hospitals, and a system of outreach so that they sort of work together quite well. And I think that would also help if it was rolled out everywhere.
Professor, thank you very much for joining us today. That is Professor Sue Forkes from the University of Cape Town, one of the authors of this report, talking about caesarean deaths being a national emergency now. Elvis is standing by to talk to our National Minister of Health in South Africa. He's in Polokwane. Thank you very much, Elvis.
Thank you, Yeben, and we continue that discussion. Of course, you can also let us know what's on your mind on this particular topic. It's a very important one for the country. Now, according to the latest maternity audits, almost 16% of mothers who die before or shortly after birth die from blood loss. A third of these women die during or after cesarean deliveries. And in 70% of these cases, deaths during C-sections could have been prevented. You can see some of the numbers up there. 2008, 2014, 30% increase in the number of deaths there. 63% of these women died after cesarean section, of which 71% could have been avoided. Now, in most cases and instances, the lack of skills among doctors and a shortage of resources, especially in the rural hospitals, are to be blamed. Now, from our SABC Polokwane studios in Limpopo, we are joined by the Health Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi. Doctor, very good morning to you, Mr. Minister. First and foremostly, off the bat, you just heard some of the shocking figures there in terms of cesarean deaths. Should we be concerned about that, Minister?
Yes, good morning, and good morning to the viewers out there. Of course, we are very much concerned and we are monitoring it. Remember, the committee that is reporting this, the Confidential Committee of Inquiry into Maternal Mortality, was set up by myself as the Minister of Health because we need to know what's happening in order to stop it. And we are aware that there are 5 major causes of death for women who in pregnancy and childbirth in South Africa. And we call them the 5 H's. The first H is HIV and AIDS. The second one is hemorrhage. That means bleeding. The third one is hypertension. The fourth one is the health worker. And the fifth one is the health system. Now, what you are describing here, we ascribe it to the fourth H, is the health worker. One has noticed that for quite some time. I've spoken to the deans of our universities because I'm worried. The level of skills of newly qualified doctors is much lower than what I used to know during our time. I've checked some of those records about cesarean section death. I can assure you, I'm not trying to praise myself. I've worked in many rural hospitals in the middle 80s when I started practicing. Sometimes working alone in a hospital, I've never had a single maternal death from a Caesar, even performing that Caesar alone. The bottom line today is that the skills of newly qualified doctors have been found to be wanting. And we know some of the reasons. Many of them do not have trainers because most of their seniors, the lecturers, even at the level of professors, spend very little time in medical schools because they are rushing to their part-time practices in private hospitals. That's the reality. In something called RWAPs or remunerated work outside the public service. So the present medical students are not like me because I was lucky. I had all the lecturers and trainers at my disposal. They are struggling to get lecturers and trainers because they are fighting for those with private practices, unfortunately.
So how do we then address the shortages of resources in the public health care sector or the system, so to speak, Minister?
What resources?
The sources, the lack of resources.
What shortage of resources?
The lack of resources and skills that we need in the public sector.
Well, the main issue here is definitely skill. The resource that is needed here to stop hemorrhage is blood. We have arranged with the South African Blood Transfusion Service that they must have specific fridges belonging to South African Blood Transfusion Service in each and every hospital, especially those that are doing Caesars, and make sure that that fridge is always stocked. That means it's a fridge specific for obstetric emergencies and is put in that hospital, is stocked and run by South African Blood Transfusion Service rather than by the hospital itself. The other issue on skills, I'm discussing with the Deans and Health Professions Council so that a doctor must not be allowed to be released from internship unless they've successfully completed a certain number of Caesars, successfully and safely. In other words, to say when you are doing internship, you must do so many Caesars during that period which are successful and safe, is then that will release you from internship. Otherwise, we shouldn't. It's one of the new things that we should be we are discussing. The other is that we have got a program called ESMO-E, which I had the professor speaking about. We introduce it to deal with this question of skills. ESMO-E means essential steps in the management of obstetric emergencies. More than 2,000 doctors have already been trained in the country, and about 4,000 nurses in SMOE, essential steps in the management of obstetric emergencies. The other thing we have done, seeing that there's a shortage of skills, especially in rural areas, we've introduced the concept of district specialist teams, where in each of the districts of South Africa we put in 7 people who are specialists, one of them being a principal gynecologist, the other a principal pediatrician, the other a principal midwife, etc. Now I'm quoting those because these 3 because they are directly related to the topic at hand now. So the specialist must be able in that district to identify skill shortages. In other words, a specialist in a district must be able to say there are 5 or 6 hospitals in district, there are 20 clinics or 40 clinics in this district that are doing where labor, women in labor can be admitted, and check the level of skills. And what is the level of skills by the midwives and doctors? Yes. Once they identify the skills gap, that district specialist must put up a program for training. Yeah. In other words, they must say, we are going to bring so many doctors because they are unskilled in doing scissors. We are going to train them until they are skilled. So those are some of the things that we are putting in place.
Now, Minister, the increase of cesarean section, especially in the private sector, we heard now it's not in the public sector, it's more in the private sector. Why do you think that is the case? Is this more profit over the health concerns of the public?
We think it's more profit, definitely. Well, there's an argument that is about health concern, but according to my analysis, it's more profit. We have got a situation in the private sector where the cesarean section rate is now 70%, meaning all of a sudden 70% of the women of the country can no longer deliver babies normally. I mean, that's quite out of this world, because people have been delivering babies normally all the time, normally and safely. And the fact that the rate has gone so high, I think profit is the biggest motive. We also know that there's an element of litigation where they are avoiding litigation. But it's profit. We hear stories in instances where they are saying the doctor had to do a Caesar because he wanted to go somewhere. He wanted to be released. He didn't want to be observing the woman in labor for 12 hours. He has got other commitments somewhere. So the best thing is to do a Caesar and finish with that woman and go away. We do hear such stories, and that's why I want to believe that is more of a profit motive than anything else.
Is there a measure to deal with this particular tendency, Doctor?
Unfortunately, at the present moment, no. Under the present system, no. We are hoping when we introduce NHI, the National Health Insurance System, because we are going to be looking at the issues of pricing and cost very closely. We are hoping then we might be having an opportunity to look into this particular situation.
Minister,
as it is at the present moment, we don't really have anything whatsoever on the table to try and reverse that trend.
Yes. Just very briefly, today is International Nurses Day. Your message to all the nurses out there?
Well, I am going to address nurses in Vuwani in a few minutes' time as part of this International Nurses Day. Well, I'm going to remind them of the fact that nursing is a calling. I'm going to remind them again about Florence Nightingale, because sometimes we do find nurses who don't do their work, and they give the employer what the employer has done to them as the reason why they are not doing very well. And I want to tell them that their contract with the patients, being Florence Nightingale's, is not related to what another person is doing. It's a special contract with patients, and which they need to respect, because I'm also going to tell them that they must realize nursing is a backbone of the whole healthcare system.
Minister, thank you so much for your time and joining us in our Limpopo State studios there. That was the Minister, Dr. Oren Motsoaledi, joining us from Limpopo, and we continue with that discussion. Let's now go over to Eben with some more comments and stuff. And it's a very interesting discussion. We'll take it even further after the second break. But over to Eben now.
Thank you very much, Elvis. We'll continue this discussion after the break. Profit over people. That's what we're going to ask some of the authors of reports with regards to cesarean. We'll do that interview after the break. First, let's take a look at what's happening on social media today. Of course, you know that's what Newsroom's about. Now, everyone is talking about #local music. That's what it's about. 90% local music to be played on all of our SABC platforms. Isn't that good news? SABC hashtag and hashtag Claudi. That's where you can get at it. It relates, of course, to the announcement by SABC COO, Mr. Claudi Mutswaneng, that all SABC-affiliated radio stations now have to play 90% local music. Of course, there's also the hashtag WEF, World Economic Forum Africa 2016. The second day of the World Economic Forum gets underway in Kigali, Rwanda today. Grasha Masal spoke yesterday. That was very interesting. Of course, we'll get an update from Diabo Seta a little bit later. Also, it's International Nurses Day today. You just heard the minister say nurses around the world are speaking out about their wonderful and weird experiences of being a nurse. Then in Uganda, the inauguration of Yoweri Museveni will take place, but there's been an alleged ban on social media for the day. During the campaigns and in elections, the hashtag Uganda Decides was doing the rounds. However, many were concerned that the elections would not be free and fair. Opposition leaders were detained ahead of the event today. President Jacob Zuma will be attending this inauguration. Then, moving on to a video that was uploaded onto YouTube 3 days ago. Now, it's by Record Pretoria, and he's now making the top trends. It shows a vehicle driving into oncoming traffic before a fatal accident. Absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking. The mind boggles. Anyhow, yeah, we've lost the video, but it all ends in tears. Drive safely, people, and don't drive on the wrong side of the road. It's just a recipe for disaster. You ruin other people's lives. Anyhow, let's take a look at our picture of the day. It comes from @Amy Morse, and it shows what the modern mother really looks like. Of course, today we're dealing with cesareans and moms and the like. There you see the laptop. Mom's working, and mom is working, and mom is also caring and loving her beautiful baby there. Wonderful picture. That's what it is. This is our shout out here at Newsroom today to all the working mothers, also the working fathers, much like myself and Elvis. Now, our comment of the day comes from Mother Nature, a growing forest, and it's from @a growing forest, and it says all natural birth and breastfeeding is great, but lots of mums and babies wouldn't survive without alternatives. We absolutely agree with that, but the number in South Africa is too high. More than 70% of women getting cesarean sections. Now, we've been told that it's 40,000 Rand to get a C-section and only a couple of hundred Rand to give natural birth. We also heard the time factor that the minister mentioned there a little bit earlier. I think that's absolutely shocking. Anyhow, let's take a look now at the front pages from around the globe. We'll start in Europe, where the Times reports that banks and multinationals will be held criminally responsible for employees who embezzle funds, launder money and evade tax under a radical reform of corporate liability laws. I hope they can send all the money back to Africa that was taken out of here over the last 50 years. Billions and billions of pounds, I can tell you. Then, in New York, the Wall Street Journal says a series of Islamic State bombings yesterday killed at least 88 people in Baghdad, marking one of the deadliest days of insurgent violence in Iraq's capital in years and exposing the government's failure to uproot extremists. Finally, we go to Iran, where the Tehran Times reports that, the worth of trade between Iran and Malaysia was $532 million in 2015, and with the removal of sanctions against Iran, they're trying to increase this number to more than $1 billion. That's according to Dato Zulkifli Mahmood, the CEO of Malaysia's External Trade Development Corporation, known as Matrade. Let's have a quick look at what's happening around the country in South Africa. We'll start in Pretoria, where the High Court is expected to call more witnesses in the defamation case involving Mpumalanga Premier David Mabuza and former Premier Matthews Phosa. Mabuza is suing Phosa for 10 million South African rands for labeling him an apartheid-era spy. Very interesting case. We love spy stories here in South Africa. Then in Mafeking, the trial of a young man accused of having raped and sodomized almost all of his family members, young and old, is expected to continue in the Lehuruche Magistrates Court in Zeerust. Of course, tomorrow we'll look at rape, so that will be a very interesting show as well. Still in Mafeking, a bail application of a Zambian and a Zimbabwean national arrested at the Kopfontein border post is expected to take place. The men were found with drugs worth more than 50 million Rand. Then, Cape Town. 6 people are expected to appear in the Grabouw Magistrates Court in the Overberg following violent service delivery protests in the area. 5 of them will appear on public violence charges and the 6th on a theft charge. Now, you saw we run a live blog there. The blog talks about the N2, the highway running through Grabouw into Cape Town is still closed. And of course, if you're in the area, be on the lookout for, well, those will be hurling rocks and putting barricades in the roads and so forth. Go to the live blog at SABC, sabc.co.za. There you go. Into approaching Cape Town, still closed due to Grabouw protests. That's a live blog. If you want to know what's going on, go to all of our live blogs. They're in real time and you can know what's going on. Time for us to take a break. Don't forget to send us a tweet on the question of the day. 90% local music being played on all our radio stations. What do you think? I love it. See you after the break.
Very good afternoon. You're watching the Midday Report.
Lunchtime news amplified.
But for now, this is what they call home. Their hope to shift to a higher ground seems to be against the tide.
Midday Report provides you with more than just news stories.
I just want Port Elizabeth to know that they own a world-class theatre.
Good afternoon. You're with the news at 1 in the headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. This is News Live. I'm Natasha Thorpe. Let's take a quick look at what's coming up in your headlines.
Good afternoon and welcome to A View from the House.
For all things news, tune in to Midday Report weekdays at 12 noon, only on the SABC News Channel.
Patty Good, who heads up the campaign My Birth, My Choice, which aims to lower the C-section rate in South Africa's private sector, believes that money is the root of all evil and is a huge driving force in all cesarean births. Experts estimate that in wealthy areas, 80% choose to have a cesarean, and in some hospitals in Cape Town, the rate exceeds 90%, despite the cost being higher than the fee for a natural birth. Now, via Skype from London, we are joined by Patty Good, the founder of My Birth, My Choice. A very good morning to you, Patty, and welcome.
Many thanks. Good to be here.
Now, let's take a look at this issue. Is profit really the biggest motivator in all cesarean births?
The right information, with key pieces of information given to moms earlier in their pregnancy, they make much better choices. They are far more educated. They are far more empowered. And then we see this fantastic decrease in the Caesar rate, and also moms coming out the other side feeling absolutely fantastic about themselves.
Patty Good, thank you so much for your time joining us here, the founder of My Birth, My Choice. And that could make you feel good. Let's continue this discussion with Evan.
Thanks very much, Alvis. If you've just joined us, let me just recap what we're busy with. South Africa has one of the highest cesarean section birth rates in the world, with annual rates 5 times more than the recommended rate. Figures released by South Africa's Council for Medical Schemes in 2013 showed that more than 70% of births to women covered by a private medical scheme were by cesarean. Less than 20% were done in public hospitals. Now, Anban Pillay, Deputy Director General for Regulation and Compliance in the Department of Health, says the high number of C-section births in the private sector was a matter of supplier-induced demand. Now, for a little bit more on the issue, we joined from our Durban studios by Dr. Merga Naidu from the South African Medical Association. A very good morning to you, Dr. Naidu. A lot has been said this morning with regards to profit over people and the high number of cesareans firstly performed in South Africa, and then the massive increase in deaths because of cesareans, because of blood loss here in South Africa. What is your view at the South African Medical Association with what is going on in South Africa?
Okay, just to
clear up a few things. The cesarean deaths, I think the statistics that you put out there may not be totally true. The commonest cause of maternal death in the last triennium was still HIV-related infections. And the second commonest cause was obstetric hemorrhage, which comprised 15.8% of deaths. And of that, about a third of them were due to bleeding during or after cesarean deliveries. Now, most of the deaths occurred in public sector hospitals, with approximately 150 deaths being reported in private hospitals during the same period. Now, the WHO has got guidelines that says that the maximum cesarean section rate should be in the region of about 15%. And the report that was released in the South African Medical Journal this month actually talks about the case fatality rate per 100,000 cesarean deliveries. And the problem, as the minister pointed out, seems to be related to skills, because the case fatality rate due to obstetric hemorrhage in the private sector is actually not that high. And that is probably due to the fact that you have a skilled obstetrician who's obviously a specialist, an anesthetist, his assistant may also be a specialist, and you have a pediatrician looking after the baby afterwards. So the outcomes for mother and baby are still quite good in the private sector. But having said that, the cesarean section of over 67% that's reported in the article is very high. And even
it's the highest in the world, Doctor. The highest in the world. It's the highest number in the world of all countries. Surely you should be concerned about that?
That is obviously of great concern. If we have a cesarean section of 67%, that is really, really high. And I think that is something that doctors and certainly patients should be looking at, because it's very important that patients themselves take control, as the last speaker mentioned, of their maternal health and discuss these things early on in pregnancy. And I think part of the reason that this high cesarean section rate is being driven in the private sector is the high cost of litigation, because it's a form of defensive medicine being practiced to actually deal with the litigation associated with poor neonatal outcomes or poor birth outcomes when a baby is born with, no oxygen during the delivery. And that actually results in higher payouts to people who are grieved, as well as higher subscriptions to insurance companies that cover doctors, like the Medical Protection Society. I think the obstetricians currently pay in excess of 600,000 Rand per year for medical insurance. And that's obviously of concern for many people.
I wanted to ask you, Doctor, I'm glad that you were watching the interview a little bit earlier with the Health Minister. The Health Minister pointed out that some unscrupulous practitioners are opting for cesarean births for profit, firstly, but secondly also because of time management, for time management purposes, if we can put it politely like that. At the South African Medical Association, are you concerned about this, and are you discussing a way to come to or to improve this situation?
Well, I think we're concerned about the statement, because obviously that would mean that there are doctors out there who are practicing unethically, because remember, the patient has to be have to provide informed consent to the doctor who does the cesarean delivery. And informed consent implies that the patient should be informed fully about the risks and benefits of the operation, as well as the alternatives that's available for her. And I think maybe that's the issue that we need to be addressing, is that are patients receiving proper informed consent? Are they making an informed choice when they decide that they're opting for a cesarean delivery compared to a normal delivery? So I think, again, it comes back to making sure that patients actually control their maternal health. And secondly, it's very important that we look at mechanisms to educate our healthcare practitioners, and also look at mechanisms to drop the high cesarean section rate at the moment.
Dr. Nadia, I thank you for coming in and facing us today, because it is a concern, and we should all work together to try and solve the problem that is now being called a national emergency. Thank you once again. That's from the South African Medical Association. Dr. Merga Naidu join us from Durban. Of course, now, My Birth, My Choice, Patty Good is still on the line from London. Patty, you wanted to respond to what Dr. Naidu said now. If you'll stay with us, Doctor, maybe you can also have a chat straight after. But Patty, just give us a quick overview.
Well, one of the things I'd like to mention is that I compiled some anecdotal evidence at a number of the Durban baby shows over consecutive years. We asked hundreds and hundreds of women what kind of birth they would like. And the answer came back that over 80% wanted natural birth. We're talking about the private sector. And it was the trigger point for me setting up the campaign, because everything I'd read to that point, everything I'd seen in the media had indicated that the mums were driving the trend, that they wanted it. And what that showed to me is that the mums really don't want it. There is this incredible disconnect from what the mums want to what's coming out the other side. And it's, you know, for women taking their own power back, but also reviewing the system about what is happening. If 80% of women are saying they want a natural birth, and then they're going into their gynae care and coming out with a Caesar, and there's a lot of emotional fallout out the other side. That's where my business focuses.
Thank you.
On dealing with the psychological, emotional issues that these women experience afterwards.
Patty, thank you for that input. Don't go away. Don't put the line down. We'll continue with Dr. Naidu. Dr. Naidu, what do you say? What do you say to Patty around the 80% number of women who want natural births, but it seems they are being coerced by doctors to have cesarean sections?
Again, it goes back to informed consent, and I think if mothers feel that way, they should be allowed to express and be allowed to deliver normally. I think it comes back to the relationship, in the doctor-patient relationship, and what exists there. Because often in a patient-doctor relationship, there could be power dynamics. A pregnant woman is extremely vulnerable and emotional during that time, and it takes very little in terms of tipping her towards accepting the cesarean delivery. So I think it requires a lot of education on the part of authorities, even the medical association, to tell patients what their rights. And the medical association has got a patient's rights charter, which actually mentions things like informed consent and being able to negotiate your...
I wanted to ask you quickly, before I get to Patty to respond, just tell us, at the South African Medical Association, how do you deal with unethical behavior and collusion and the like?
Well, the Medical Association does not per se deal with that. The Health Professions Council of South Africa deals with unethical practices. So what tends to happen is, if there's a practitioner that has been found to practice unethically or negligent, that person is generally referred to the Health Professional Council, who then constitutes a preliminary disciplinary inquiry to see if there's cause to take it further. And then the person is then assessed, the case is assessed by a group of his peers or her peers, and a decision is made as to whether the case of negligence or unethical practice actually exists.
Thank you, Dr. Naidu. Let's go back to London. Patty, what do you say to that?
Well, I think that, a lot of women don't pursue avenues of getting support around, feeling that they haven't been taken care of well. I mean, the stories I could tell you, we could sit here for a day, from the mums. I think the message certainly my message is to the woman is, stop waiting for someone else to solve this. You take your power back. Everybody's got Google. Get online. Do your own research. Find out what your patient rights are. Exercise those rights. If you don't agree with what your gynae is saying, get a second opinion. Change your gynecologist. You're paying for it. empower yourself to make better decisions and have a much better birth experience.
Patty, thank you very much for joining us from London. My birth, my choice. That's Patty. Thank you, Elvis. What's that? There we go.
Bottom.
Where can people get a little bit more information is what Elvis wants to add into the mix. Where can people get hold of you and get a little bit more information before I go to Dr. Naidu to wrap it up?
Mybirthmychoice.co.za is the website. They can purchase the toolkit, which is live at the moment. And my main website is pattygood.com, and I offer emotional support programs through that, so mums can get busy immediately.
Thank you very much for joining us, Patty. My birth, my choice. Dr. Naidu, we're giving you the final word, but I've got to ask you a question. My personal capacity, I'm very concerned when the minister talks about doctors are rushing to complete operations. The time difference between having normal birth and having cesarean is so much that doctors are actually rushing through that. If you can respond to that and also just give us your final remarks.
I think doctors should actually be working as part of a team, because it's not only the doctor that actually monitors the woman in labor, because midwives are also part of the team. And also when it comes to monitoring the woman post-delivery, it's usually the nursing staff in the ward that do that. So it's very important that we realize that it's a team approach, and we need to go back to basics. And if we do the basics well, which includes monitoring a woman in labor and deciding when a cesarean section is necessary or not. And if you go back to the article, one of the points made was we should try to avoid unnecessary cesarean deliveries, because especially in the public sector where you have a major problem with skills, especially in rural provinces, the outcomes are quite poor, and that's why it's been constituted as a national emergency. And I think there has to be a concerted effort by the authorities, by, the minister mentioned, the universities, and patients themselves should take some control over their decision, as well as I think it needs to be a comprehensive strategy to deal with this problem of bleeding during or after cesarean delivery.
Doctor, I thank you for being so forthright with us today and coming in and giving us your view from the South African Medical Association about what has now become a national emergency. Thank you once again. That's Dr. Merga Naidu coming to us live from Durban. Of course, we're talking about cesarean deaths. We're talking about the high number of cesarean births here in South Africa. More than 80% of women are having cesareans in South Africa, or more than 70%, they say. The doctor said 67%. Now, Elvis has got more on this. We've run out of time in our first hour. Elvis, we'll be back at the top of the hour and we'll take this forward, eh?
We'll see you then. It's 10:00 hours Central Africa time. It's Thursday right here on Newsroom on SABC News Channel 404. If you've just joined us, Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome as we broadcast live from Auckland Park Studios in Johannesburg to the rest of the African continent. I'm Elvis Preston.
And I'm Renee Vest, and we'll be with you until 12 o'clock today. We're also streaming live on YouTube with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. Now today we're asking you, what are your thoughts on SABC's radio stations playing 90% local music?
Well, you can let us know, but we're also focusing on another topic, and that's our theme for today. It's on cesarean sections. Why is there an increase in this type of operation in our hospitals? I would like to know your thoughts on that as well. Let us know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page. By the way, if you like us there, you become part of the Informed. But first, let's take a look at your news headlines. Egypt has toppled South Africa in the second position as the largest economy on the African continent. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni will be inaugurated today after winning the elections in February, allowing him to extend his rule to 35 years. And government is expected to continue with various villages in Vuwani in an effort to stabilize the situation. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news with Renee, let's find out from Kendall Matamate what's happening on the sports front.
Good morning to you as well as Renee, and good morning to everyone at home as well. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. The draw is not good enough for Tuks as they hit rock bottom even after their draw with a 2-all draw with Polokwane City. And Novak Djokovic struggles against qualifier Stefan Robert, finally beating him in 2 sets to reach the third round of the Italian Open.
Tokyo!
Japan says Tokyo's campaign to host the 2020 Olympics was clean, denying media reports of a $1.5 million bribe. That is what we've got for you in the sports. Also, reminding you that I'll be chatting to Shona Hendricks from the High Performance Center about our team's preparations for the Rio Olympics. Now back to the main desk for the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Now, the murder trial of Czech fugitive Radovan Kričer and his co-accused will resume today at the High Court in Johannesburg. This after the absence of one of the defense lawyers. The 5 have been charged with the murder of Lebanese national Sam Issa. Now, they allegedly shot and killed Issa in Bedfordview in October 2013. For more on the case, we now cross to our reporter Gillian Pillay, who's at the Johannesburg High Court. Gillian, a very good morning to you. Can you tell us what we can expect today?
A very good morning to you, Elvis. Yes, yesterday we were not in court because one of the defense lawyers had another matter in Pretoria, so that again stalled proceedings, but that's the nature of court proceedings here. Today we expect a very short application. It's just applications that are being brought ahead of the trial here, Elvis. What I think will be brought is one of the defense lawyers is going to present a matter on behalf of one of his clients who isn't really getting the support he needs in one of the prisons in Krugersdorp. But another element that will be dissected here in court today, Elvis, is that the defense are saying the information that was given to them from the state doesn't give real details on where, what happened, who was involved. And what the state is saying is that they're unable really to give these details because it's going to jeopardize ongoing investigations, Elvis. So we're not expecting trial at all to start today. We are expecting the day to be dominated purely by these applications that will be brought by the defense, Elvis.
Now, it seems like Kričer has got a trick or two up his sleeve again, because on Tuesday he presented grounds to have his restraints removed. What were those grounds?
Well, we spent the entire day Tuesday going through these grounds, but it wasn't only brought by Kričer himself, Elvis. It was also brought by the other 4 co-accused. What Kričer is saying is, and he's made this bid before, and we saw that bid being brought before Judge Lamont during the last court appearance, the drug dealing matter, Elvis. He made a plea that these restraints be removed. He is not only restrained at his wrists, Elvis. He's also got shackles, leg irons on his ankles, and he's also got this, what we found out Tuesday is called a wrist, like a waist shock belt. And we have the opinion that this belt is mainly to track his movements. So what the grounds that Kretschmer brought was one, that it's infringing on his dignity, on his right to a fair trial, that it's putting a perception before this new presiding officer that he is this dangerous man, one that is possibly looking at escaping. And the case law that was brought by the defense lawyers was that, no man, whether or not he's being convicted, should be brought in these restraints before a new presiding officer without evidence even being laid in the new matter. Kretschmer is saying that this waist belt has caused injuries. He's very uncomfortable. He wears it for up to 10 hours at a time every day. And the image that's being created, according to Kretschmer, is that he is this person who is about to escape, Albert. So these are the grounds that was put forward by Kretschmer. But what the state is saying is that this is a unique matter. It's an extraordinary matter. And there's a lot of security measures that needed to be taken in this matter. They've come to an agreement to take the risk shackles off of all the accused, including Kretschmer, and they're saying to relinquish all the other restraints would really put this matter in jeopardy, looking at all the security around it, looking at all the reports that's come out around why the state has had to take these measures around the Kretschmer matter, particularly, Elvis.
Just briefly, Gillian, what time is the court supposed to start today?
We're expecting proceedings to kick off here at 10:30, Elvis. As I said yesterday, we were unable to come to court because of one of the defense lawyers that had another matter. As I said, it's going to be dominated by applications. I really don't think that we'll see this week being that will kick off for the trial. Tomorrow we expect the Judge Msemeki to give a judgment in those restraints application that was brought on Tuesday, Elvis. So it will be another day of applications by those accused, Elvis.
Thank you so much for that report. That was our reporter on the scene, Gillian Pillay, joining us live from the Johannesburg High Court. Time now for more news with Renee.
Thank you very much, Elvis. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni will be inaugurated today for the 5th term. The 71-year-old was declared winner of the election in February with 60% of the vote, allowing him to extend his rule to 35 years. President Jacob Zuma will be among the heads of state attending the swearing-in ceremony. Meanwhile, Ugandan police have arrested opposition leader Kizza Besigye, who has rejected the election result, citing alleged rigging and other irregularities.
Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni will take the oath for a 6th time since capturing power 30 years ago.
It is the end of the old government, the old leader, and also ushering in a new leader, a new president, and a new government.
South African President Jacob Zuma is in Uganda to join other heads of state who are attending. Uganda's government expects up to 300,000 people to gather at the Kololo main grounds. Security is on high alert.
The stage is set and security is well in place as President Yoweri Museveni prepares to be sworn in on Thursday. The ceremony here will mark the start of another 5-year term, one that is expected to be of major economic and social transformation.
Leading opposition party, the Forum for Democratic Change, disputes the election results and plan to hold countrywide protests. Leon Sanyange, SABC News, Kampala.
The shortage of skills can be addressed by building strong youth entrepreneurs. This is the message reverberating throughout the World Economic Forum, which kicked off in Kigali, Rwanda yesterday. Experts say the continent's economic future is in the hands of young people. Liabo Seto put this insert together for us from Kigali in Rwanda.
Entrepreneurship is of growing interest to the youth across the continent. Nearly 60% of Africa's youth is under the age of 25. And if this group can succeed in building prosperous businesses, then perhaps this bulging youth unemployment rate may just be a thing of the past for Africa. In Rwanda, youth entrepreneurship is growing at an incredibly fast pace. Many youth-led and youth-owned businesses are springing up. Wilson Monenzero owns Vera Business Group Limited, which he started in 2012. He only employs one person at this stage and says an enabling environment in Kigali gives him hope that he can grow his business.
Our government is help us to get some dues.
This year's World Economic Forum is intent on grooming youth entrepreneurs. Many say this is the best platform to get started.
I want to be able to network with other entrepreneurs, learn about how can my business be influenced by the digital aspects of it. So there's just so much to learn, so many people to interact with, and see if I can have different opportunities, being with financing or just any kind.
Decision makers are equally enthusiastic to groom the next generation of Africa's global shapers.
We need to encourage our young people to apply the new tools to solve the problems of the present, but also create the jobs of the future.
The World Economic Forum promises to look at how to leverage the youthful spirit of Africa towards creating businesses that can transform consumers to innovators. Diabo Seton, SABC News, Kigali, Rwanda.
Earlier, SABC News crossed to Rwandan capital Kigali, where our reporter Diabo Seto is there for the 26th World Economic Forum on Africa. Diabo interviewed South African Minister of Trade and Industry and asked him for his thoughts on South Africa dropping to third places as Africa's largest economy.
I think that these rankings have got nothing much to do with who's performing well and who's performing badly in that respect relative. What we've got is we've got an overall improvement in performance on the African continent. And we've got a couple of countries with large populations which have been doing relatively better over the last few years, and that their GDPs are larger than ours in overall terms. So Nigeria is a country with 170 million people. More than 3 times the population of South Africa. They ought to have a larger GDP than South Africa, and the fact that they've got one means that there are more opportunities for South African businesses on the continent, because the continent is growing. If the continent was stagnating, we have less opportunities on the continent of South Africa. Egypt has a population of 90 million people, which is again nearly twice ours. So I think those are the factors. So it's not a relative league table. South Africa remains per capita larger than either of those, and we are also the most industrialized country on the African continent. We have an infrastructure in place which is much more developed than elsewhere on the continent. We have business systems in place, and we have businesses that are interacting with the rest of the continent. That's our value proposition, and we are taking steps to ensure that investors have an easier interaction with us as government through initiatives like Invest South Africa, the one-stop investment facility. So I think that we're coming here and telling people that, yes, we've got challenges as a country, but for example, earlier this week, through the work with business and government, the partnership that was forged there, that was taken note of, and that was a significant factor leading Moody's to keep our investment grading stable. So I think those are the messages that we'll be conveying here, that we're at work. We've got challenges. We've got challenges as a country. We've got challenges as a continent, but that we are working together to address those, and we're making progress on a number of fronts.
Now today our theme basically focuses on cesarean section, a woman giving birth. Now the number of women giving birth by cesarean section in South Africa is on the rise. More than 2 in 3 South African mothers in private hospitals give birth by cesarean section. Now that is way above the international average. Experts estimate that in wealthy areas, 80% of the women there choose to have cesarean sections, and in some hospitals in Cape Town, that rate exceeds 90%. We gave you that stat a little bit earlier. Despite the cost of C-sections being higher than the fee for a natural birth. Now, we also heard that a little earlier, that there's not much comparison, but it's all the extras that attach to that increases the cost. Now, the World Health Organization advises a maximum of 15% cesareans per country. But the question then is, why do women choose to do C-sections? To find out, we're now joined by Sonia Nodia. She's the editor of Living and Loving magazine. Sonia, a very good morning to you and welcome. Now, you interact quite a lot with your readers, especially women, about giving birth. What are they telling you with regards to C-section?
Well, I think bottom line is that it's become very convenient to have a C-section. And I think many moms just don't want to take the chance that something is going to go wrong. So I think they really do trust their doctors and their midwives to give them that kind of guidance. I think a lot of people start out wanting a natural birth, but as the pregnancy kind of progresses, they start getting really scared and fearful. And of course, if there's any sort of like complications that your doctor picks up, you know, you're going to trust him to sort of guide you. And I think, yeah, Caesar is a very convenient option for moms, and it's very empowering because you're in control then, you know.
Now, this fear that you're talking about, we heard it earlier from our previous speaker as well. What is it that drives then women, because they are so fearful of a natural birth, that, and don't they know about other alternatives or being informed by their doctors about other alternatives?
I think in certain cases, surely I do think the moms are informed, and moms themselves talk amongst each other. But especially for first-time moms, I just think, you know, it really, really is very scary. And, yeah, I don't think they're that informed. And maybe also when they go and visit their gynaes, they don't ask the right questions. Once again, I think a lot of work needs to be done on that side.
Now, you normally try and solicit some feedback from your readers. What are they telling you? Are they perhaps then advised by their doctors, or are they coerced in order to get a C-section?
I think in many cases, mostly I would say they are advised. That it would be in the best interest of the mother and the baby. And of course, the baby is your very first priority as a mom. You want everything to go well. But, you know, don't underestimate the fear fact. These moms are really, really scared. And I think it's the pain, that, you know, and why go through that if, yeah.
Is there perhaps a glamorous side to doing a C-section over natural birth? You think that woman is getting these type of thoughts at that point in time when they go through this?
Well, I don't know how anything be very glamorous about the whole birth thing, but certainly the perception we have from the media and watching our soapies and whatever, that it's something, you know, very regulated and planned, and, you know, you go to sleep and you wake up and you've got this perfect baby and everything's hunky-dory, you know.
Because you referred to convenience a little bit earlier. It's quick, it's easy, and it's done, whereas natural birth can take a whole day, so to speak, you know, to deliver. In some cases,
days, you know, and it's extremely traumatic. And I often find with our first-time moms, they will go and have a Caesar for their second child because they've had either traumatic birth or something's gone wrong in the first one.
So you're obviously educating the moms that's reading your articles to do what? Just to focus on C-sections, or to look at alternatives?
I think for all of us, I mean, if you are able to have a natural birth and you're informed about it, I think, I mean, that would be our first port of call. But we want moms to be informed about the pros and cons of each type of birth. And that is kind of where we put focus on. So, I mean, it's not for me to judge how a mom wants to have her child, you know, but she must be informed, because there are risks with both.
Are there benefits to natural birth or benefits to C-sections? What if you can compare those two for us?
Well, the benefits of having a natural birth is that, you know, you have your baby and you literally can get up in a few hours and start breastfeeding and walking around your ward. You know, your recovery time is so much quicker, and I think that is great. And then obviously when you've had a Caesar, I mean, you could be bound to your bed for days on end, weeks on end, and especially if you've got complications. And a lot of moms like to have that, like, well, they want to be kind of bond with their children as well. So I think a natural birth allows you to have that immediate contact with your child, where when you're having a Caesar, often there are other things that are happening and you only get to meet your baby a little bit later on. Depends on the circumstances, of course. Yeah.
Sonia, thank you so much for joining us here in studio.
It's a pleasure.
That was Sonia Nodir. She's the editor of Living and Loving magazine, talking to us about why her readers in that particular magazine choose to give birth via C-section over natural birth. And of course, she gave us a couple of insights there. So read the magazine, I would say, and get informed. Now, remember, you can also let us know what's on your mind on the Facebook page and Twitter page on this particular issue. That's our topic for today, focusing on C-section or cesarean births. But the question that we're asking you today is, on your screen right now, what are your thoughts on 90% of local music being played on all our radio stations on SABC? We'd like to get your thoughts on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. Let's now return to our story in Uganda, where it's President Yoweri Museveni expected to be inaugurated. We now cross live to our reporter Julius Mungambwa, who is in Kampala, where the ceremony is taking place. Julius, a very good morning to you. Can you give us the latest? There must be some excitement in Uganda where you are. Has the inauguration started already?
Yeah, the festivities of the inauguration are already taking place. Several heads of states have arrived, but I'll give you the brief of President Zuma, who arrived here Wednesday evening. President Zuma was received by host President Yoweri Museveni. Now, from the airport, they went to the State House, and they had bilateral meeting. They talked about a number of issues, but they are yet to come out to the public to share with us what the two leaders discussed. And they had a state dinner. And in a few hours' time, we'll be seeing President Zuma join other heads of state for the swearing ceremony here in Kampala. But as we speak now, it's a joyous mood at the Kololo grounds where President Museveni will be handed the instruments of power to take on other 5 years in office.
Now, we know that our president is there, but what is the general feeling among the Ugandans about the re-election of President Museveni?
President Yoweri Museveni has been in power for 30 years, and this is going to be his 5th term. We'll say it's a mixed reaction. The country is divided into two, the people who support the government and those who are opposed to it. People who support the government are the very people who voted for President Yoweri Museveni to come back to office. Now, this despite the disputed election, because we saw the opposition went to court to challenge President Yoweri Museveni's win. Now, the opposition on the other side, they think, okay, the election was not genuine, and President Yoweri Museveni's swearing in is not genuine, but court made it already clear because the petition was dismissed and President Yoweri Museveni's victory was upheld. So today, 2 or 3 hours from now, he will be getting the instruments of power, the Constitution, the coat of arms, and all that. So the opposition now has no window to challenge the win.
Can we expect any disruptions to the inauguration, perhaps?
There was some disruption yesterday when the main opposition candidate, this is President Yoweri Museveni, President Museveni's major rival, Dr. Kizza Besigye. He left his home and went to one of the busiest streets in Kampala, and then we saw a collision between police and the military trying to disperse his crowd. People had gathered to celebrate with him. They were trying to cheer him as he drove through the streets, but again, he was arrested and taken back to his home, and several other opposition politicians have been held at their homes. Now, this follows the background that the main opposition party, the Forum for Democratic Change, they had planned parallel inaugurations. They wanted to swear in their own leader. They wanted to swear in Dr. Besigye in protest to President Yoweri Museveni's inauguration. So a number of them have been held at their homes. And if by any chance, possibly if they get out and organize their supporters and sympathizers, I think that's when the police will step in, because the police boss has made it clear that they won't allow them to go ahead with their parallel inaugurations.
Now, I did indicate that our president is there today for the inauguration, but who are the other dignitaries that's in Kampala?
Several other dignitaries are here from the neighborhood here. We have President John Magufuli of Tanzania. Down south, we have President Robert Mugabe. But also notably, there's President Omar Bashir from Sudan. President of Sudan, Bashir, is wanted by International Criminal Court, and the relationship between Uganda and Sudan has not been very smooth. But recently, when President Yoweri Museveni went to Sudan, it was seen as a sign that was meant to calm the tensions between the two countries. So he's here, and government has made it clear they cannot arrest him on behalf of the International Criminal Court.
Julius, thank you so much for giving us your report there. That was our reporter, Julius Mugambwa. He's joining us live from Kampala, where the inauguration is today taking place of the president that's taking up. He's going to be 35 years in power. Well, we'll take a break and we'll be right back with your sports news with Kendall Makamate.
Our eyes are the window to the beautiful wonders of the world, but blindness enhances other senses. Technology has made living with blindness easy.
If you look on the side here, it's got like grooves in there. Yeah. So the first one after when it comes together will be a 20 Rand, 50 Rand. And if I slide this in, I can see according to the grooves, it's now on 50 Rand.
To Steve Kekana, blindness was never a hindrance, but a blessing.
You got to know that you are the child of the universe, being blind, and you've got the right to be here.
Join your host, Dr. Sello Mutawun, every Saturday from 9 a.m.
Welcome back. My name is Kendall Makhamat and I've got your sports on Newsroom. Now we start our bulletin for sports today on a slightly different note. The Rio 2016 Olympic Games kick off in less than 3 months' time, and therefore our expectation as sports-loving South Africans, we always are going to be very high. We expect medals from our athletes. The more, the better. Behind the scenes and before we get to the games, there is a lot of preparation that has to be undergone first. The High Performance Centre in Pretoria is one such institution where some of the men and women representing South Africa and themselves have been hard at training for the 28th Summer Olympics. Joining us from our Pretoria studios is Shona Hendricks, the Head of Sports Science at the High Performance Centre at the University of Pretoria. Shona, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsroom.
Hi, Kendall. Thanks for having me.
Shona, people know of Athletics South Africa. They know of SASCOC. But a lot of people just hear about the High Performance Centre or HPC, as some people know you. They don't know where you fit in. Can you just help us with that?
Yeah, so the High Performance Centre is based at the University of Pretoria. And there's many different facets of what we do. So we have a tuck sport high school, and we have different development academies where we work with athletes. But then we also have a sports science and medical sponsorship for 39 athletes that are medal hopefuls or Rio Olympic hopefuls. And we really spend a lot of time trying to help them with anything from a sports science and medical or coaching perspective as well.
Right, now you say there are 39 athletes that you work with. So it's not every single athlete from South Africa going to the Olympics that goes through your books. How does it happen? How does anyone get onto your books and gets to work with you?
Well, from that sponsorship point of view, that sponsored list, those are athletes that are based in our system, normally through the tuck sports system as well, with the coaches that are in and around Pretoria. So if they really are requiring a lot of sports science and medical help, they can come to us and we can assist them with that.
All right. So now, how do you choose the athletes that you're actually going to be working with? Because I know that there are very specific athletes that you work with, and not everybody gets to work with you. How do you choose them?
It's really, we focus on certain sports as well. We've got expertise in different areas, and so we try and really work within those sporting codes. But yes, the sort of process for becoming a sponsored athlete it's quite intense, and you have to be at a certain level within South Africa as well to be even considered. But athletes can apply for that sponsorship, and that goes to a committee, and that gets discussed and then confirmed from there.
All right, now specifically, I know that you work with people like Akani Simbini, Nell, amongst some of them. These are the track athletes. Can you tell us a little bit about these athletes that you work with and how it is that, let's start with Akani Simbini. When you first met up with Akani Simbini, where was he and where is he in terms of like the work that you've done with him now?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Akani's come a long way as well, but, you know, just the work that we've done has just become more and more intensified over the years. So, you know, he has full strength and conditioning services every day, physio, medical, and, you know, he's always been a special talent, but really in terms of making someone a world-class sprinter, you really have to have, you know, a full holistic view of that athlete. So, you know, the way he's improved over the last few years is just, it's been amazing, and a lot of credit to Akani for the work that he puts in as well.
And then you also have had to do some work with Thando Roto as well, who's also in the race that that our viewers have just seen. What's the difference in terms of the background that an athlete comes from, and how does it affect the progression through the program?
That's huge, you know, and that's why we have a full team of sports psychologists on board as well. And when athletes come from different backgrounds, we have different adjustment programs that we'll take them through. You know, the demand on a high-level athlete is huge, and the ability to be able to adjust to that is needed. Otherwise, they'll crack under that pressure, the demands of those sorts of trainings. So we have a full multidisciplinary team that looks at that, but the sports psychologists take a lot in terms of taking that on and taking them through a good adjustment program.
Tell us, who else do you have on your program that some of our viewers might know who is likely to be in the Olympics team?
Sure, I mean, there's a lot of the sprinters, a couple of the swimmers as well, so Cameron van der Berg's on that list, as well as some of the rowers. So, you know, the rowing program has been a great program over the years. It's been a long sort of 8 to 10 year process, and really, you know, from winning the gold medal in 2012, have qualified, if I'm not mistaken, 5 boats for Rio, you know, and so that process is also going really, really well. And then there's a couple of the 100-meter sprinters, female, so Karina Horn, as well as Nell is in the 400s. So there's a different variety of track and field athletes as well. Let's talk a little bit about the swimmers. Like we had Cameron van der Berg on our screens just now, and Cameron van der Berg has been a phenomenal 50-meter swimmer. Basically, he's one of those medalists that we're expecting to get a gold or a silver at the very least. How do you get somebody who's already really good at what they do and get them to peak and be highly competitive to be a world beater? Sure, Kendall, if I had a straight answer for that, I think, you know, everyone would have the winning formula. You know, it's so individual specific, and you know, it's about making those small changes and that consistency and the hard work and the different aspects to it every single day. You know, someone like Cameron, I know, works extremely hard in the pool as well as out of the pool, you know, in the gym. You know, so there's just so many different aspects to it, and that's why having this multidisciplinary approach is so vital to the athletes. And someone like Nell, who's been in the business for a bit of time, but is still highly competitive. We've seen her at the Diamond Leagues all over last year as well, leading up to the Olympics. Where do you get to tweak her mindset? Where do you get to tweak her performances? Because she's yet to peak and hit the top 3 at major events. How do you get her to get into those top 3? Yeah, again, you know, it's so individual, you know, so there's nutritional aspects, psychological aspects, and each athlete is going to be different. You know, Venda's performances over the last year have improved dramatically, you know, and even though she's still lying 4th, you know, that she finished in the Diamond League now, just the improvement that she's made over the last 12 to 18 months has been dramatic. And again, you know, it's never going to be one component. It's never going to be just strength and conditioning or just psychology. You know, there's so many different aspects that come into play. Shona, and in closing, one of the things that has been massive in South African sports, especially with the Olympics coming up, is how South African sprinters have absolutely exploded onto the scene. What do you think it is that's happening now? Because all of a sudden we've got a few athletes that are running sub-10 100 meters. We've got brand new South African records being set and broken almost every few months. What is it that's happened to the South African sprint scene? I think, Kendall, it's been a process. You know, it looks like it's suddenly exploding, but these sprinters have all been working particularly hard for the last few years. You know, not the last few months. It's been years of process, and really I think it's good coaching. I think coaching from a sprinting point of view, the coaches have really learned more, and they're putting a lot of effort into becoming better coaches. They're sharing information amongst each other. And, again, then complemented with good coaching is the sports science and medical. And when you get that whole process right, then that's what's really going well with the sprinting at the moment. And the athletes just putting in really the hard yards as well. And the sprinters that we work with, I know someone like Wade as well, but they are so dedicated and they committed to their sport, to making such a big difference.
Yeah, no, Sean, I'm glad you mentioned Wade van Niekerk, because that man is certainly something to behold. He's just like written himself into the history books. Thank you so much, Shona, for chatting to us about this.
No, awesome. Thanks for having me, Kendall.
There you have it. Shona Hendricks, the head of sports science at the High Performance Center at the University of Pretoria, talking to us about how they prepare our athletes for Rio 2016. Now, carrying on with other sports news, with just one round of matches left to be played in the 2015-2016 Absa Premiership season, the relegation and top 8 battles look tense. The 3 points separating 14th place Jomo Cosmos from the University of Pretoria, who have slipped to the bottom of the log standings.
Cosmos needed to beat Golden Arrows in Durban last night to be safe from relegation. It was never going to be an easy match for Ezenkosi, as Arrows are focused on being in the top 8 come the end of the season. Cosmos are on 25 points in 29 matches, one clear of Maritzburg United, who are in the 15th position. Ezenkosi, however, need just 1 point to retain their Absa Premiership status without going through the torrid relegation promotion playoffs, as long as they don't lose points for fielding an irregular player. The University of Pretoria have moved down to the foundation of the log after playing out to a 2-all draw against Polokwane City. Tuks need to overcome Arrows next week Saturday to stand any chance of fighting another day in the Absa Premiership. However, it will not be a walk in the park for Sean Bartlett's men at home to Clinton Lassen's troops, who are pushing for a top 8 spot. Following their 1-0 win at home to MTN 8 holders Ajax Cape Town, Maritzburg United have given themselves a lifeline in the Absa Premiership. Should they win their last match of the season against fellow relegation-threatened Cosmos, the People's team will write the script of a lifetime about escaping the dreaded relegation as well as the relegation promotion playoffs. They are currently 2 points above the University of Pretoria and 1 behind Cosmos. Meanwhile, after losing 2-0 to Chippa United, Soweto Giants, Orlando Pirates are not guaranteed a position in the top 8. However, it's in their hands. A win or a draw against SuperSport United next week will be enough for the Bucks to keep their place in the top 8. Mtutuzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Now here's a quick summary of the results of all of the matches that were played last night. As you know, all 16 teams were in action yesterday. Quite a lot to go through. I'll be very quick about it. A lot of draws. SuperSport United 0-0 with Black Aces. A 1-0 win for Golden Arrows over Jomo Cosmos. Cosmos definitely ruining that missed chance. Free State Stars 2-0 against Kaizer Chiefs. Kaizer Chiefs failing to beat Free State Stars to improve their log standings. Platinum Stars losing 2-3 to Bloem Celtic at the Royal Bafokeng Stadium. And then Mamelodi Sundowns are winning 1-0 against Bidvest Wits at the Bidvest Stadium. Of course, the Sundowns have won the title. They'll carry on winning, isn't it? Now, Maritzburg United 1-0 against Ajax Cape Town. Maritzburg United, they finally move off the bottom of the log, and Polokwane City 2-0 against the University of Pretoria. Their draw not enough for University of Pretoria to keep from slipping downwards. Chippa United 2-0, they win. They beat Orlando Pirates at the Nelson Mandela Bay. Now we have a quick look at the log standings, and we start at the bottom because we know the top's been sorted. A lot of movements up and down. SuperSport United slipping down as Bloem Celtic on 10 points, moving upwards. Then we've got Free State Stars sitting on 35 points. Ajax Cape Town slipping downwards, and Polokwane City slipping down to they're on 13th position. 14th position, Jomo Cosmos on 25 points. And really, between Jomo Cosmos, Maritzburg United, and the University of Pretoria, with one match to go, it could really be any one of those that gets automatically relegated, or maybe even gets found in the NFT playoffs. Now we look at the top of the log where there's been some movement, and really now teams are jockeying for position to try and stay in the top 8 for next year's MTN top 8. We all know how important it is to the teams for that one. And ups and downs, Chipa United moving up, Orlando Pirates moving down to 7th position. Golden Arrows jumping into the top 8, and they're sitting on 40 points with 1 match to go, and they might just stay right there. Now, the top 5 remain on course at the Italian Open tennis tournament in Rome. Yesterday, number 1 seed Novak Djokovic of Serbia and number 3 Roger Federer of Switzerland won their second-round matches in straight sets. But still unclear whether Federer, who's been struggling with a back injury this year, will be in action today.
There was great anticipation ahead of the clash between Federer and German teenager Alexander Zverev. The Swiss superstar's back injury has kept him out of competition for most of the year, and he was returning to action ahead of the start of the year's second Grand Slam, the French Open in Paris on Monday. A relieved Federer won the clash in straight sets. Stepping out on court was something he had to do.
He looks fully fit and raring to go.
It would have been easy not to play and then just be unsure of how I was going to feel in Paris. So at some point you have to go out there and see how it feels, and I'm happy I was able to play a full match without any setbacks.
Federer will decide later today whether he is ready to face Austrian Dominic Thiem.
I'm literally going practice after practice. Every 15 minutes I speak to Ivan or Severin and say, okay, what else can we do? So it's baby steps right now.
Meanwhile, fifth-seeded Spaniard Rafael Nadal booked his place in the third round. The King of Clay recorded a solid 6-3, 6-3 win over Germany's Philipp Kohlschreiber in 80 minutes. Nadal will face Nick Kyrgios next. After winning the nail-biting first set in the tiebreak against 10th seed Milos Raonic, the controversial Aussie steamrolled over the Canadian in the second, winning it 6-3 to go through. Liesl Zankel, SABC News.
Now, before we go to a break, let's take a quick peek at what's happening on social media. There are many who are sharing their thoughts on the death of Tony Cozier, legendary West Indian cricket commentator. As you can see, we've got this photograph of him right there. Let's start by taking a picture of the day from RY Africa, where Indian batting legend Virendra Sehwag said that Tony Cozier, for me, you were champagne on air. Now, this particular comment comes from Michael Vaughan, and he says, so sad. Forget all the great players. Tony Cozier was the reason I loved West Indian cricket. Rest in peace, Tony. And there's a picture of the beloved man. This comes from Virendra Sehwag, and he says, you were the champagne on air. That's where we leave it on that somber note for the Sports Bulletin. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we carry on with all the news and analysis. You're watching Newsroom.
Today provide news updates giving a wealth of knowledge, breaking stories and crossing live for you. We follow business developments intensely. Experts and analysts tackle all challenging issues for you. We cover stories locally and abroad to keep you informed. We cover all sporting codes just for you. We are sure to give you weather to be ready for the day. Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Now, they're awake just before sunrise. Their chirps and tweets provide sweet melodies as background music for our day-to-day lives. Some with delicate features, other with bright colors, and even those large eagles who other creatures may fear. Birds play an important part in our ecosystem. Now, to tell us more, we were joined in studio by NatureCast's Alex Dermer, and we asked him why birds are so important for the ecosystem.
Birds perform such an amazing array of activities for us, generally, whether it's decomposing through carrion or eating of carrion, such as vultures, whether it's helping us pollinate plants, and actually with control of insects and such as well. So things that people think of as pets or as pests, so whether it's locusts or anything like that, that's where insectivores come into play as well. So, I mean, the amount of things that birds actually do for us, it's incredible, really. Overlooked, like you said, but they're really cool things.
Now, I know you guys have been working at NatureCast on a documentary recently on birds, the birds of Makuleke, if I'm not mistaken. Tell us about this area first, and why did you then decide to have a look at the birds there?
Well, Makuleke area is in the northern part of the Kruger Park. The Kruger Park has around 420-odd species of birds, and a lot of them are actually found within the northern part of the Kruger. So some of those birds in the northern Kruger are actually found in their southernmost parts within Africa, such as racket-tailed rollers. And then there's also really rare birds, such as pearl-spotted owls and fishing owls and the such. So the Kruger, obviously being such an amazing place as it is, and the birds thereof, it was just great just to show a little bit about some of the birds that we'd seen and actually got some footage of. They're quite hard to get footage of, understandably, though.
Yeah, some incredible pictures we see on screen now with the birds that we often overlook. Just talk to us about the threats that our bird life face day to day. Humans are now playing a significant role in destroying their habitat. Is it as simple as that, or have we even a more active role in the threat to bird life?
Yeah, it really is as simple as that. Whether it comes down to for things such as industrialization and chemicals going into rivers, for example, bad uses of insecticides, or just power lines for certain raptors and that kind of thing. Also deforestation, so the lack of big trees, obviously, out of wilderness areas, obviously, it doesn't exactly help vultures or a lot of other raptor species in terms of their nesting and breeding practices either.
You talk about the threats to them, the power lines and the poison and all the kind of things that's quite natural in our environment. Here in South Africa, do we have enough of the rehabilitation programs for wild birds who get injured or even get trapped by us, or even those that are poisoned, for that matter?
Yeah, there definitely are rehabilitation centres and that. I also think a lot has actually got to do with awareness of what we actually are putting back into the environment. So if you take oil spills on the coastline and all of that, and there definitely are huge rehabilitation stations that help our penguins and our seabirds as well. And then obviously the wild birds that we like to think of in game reserves, such as Kruger Park that we mentioned earlier. So whether it's poisoning of carcasses or just then lack of food just because of those insecticides that have been used.
I must say, some of the shots that you guys took out in Makuleke are just amazing, and it's incredible. These birds all look familiar, but when you see the name on screen, suddenly the penny drops. Oh, that's what it is. Yes, brought to you by NatureCast. Quickly tell us, what should we be doing as individuals to assist in the conservation of birds, if you can do so at your own home?
Well, yes, obviously there are certain great things that we can be doing. A lot of people supply seed for birds in winter when there is a lack of food. And then it's also just being aware when you are in a rural area, that kind of thing. Don't throw your rubbish away. And then also, like I was saying earlier, and I've obviously mentioned the point a few times, is just like don't use bad insecticides or anything like that. Obviously, it then goes back into the ecosystem and it affects all things, obviously, not just birds.
What about hunting and shooting? Is that still a threat? And if so, how do we mitigate that? What's being done?
I'm sure it is a threat, but I don't really know too much about the hunting scene with regards to it. But yes, I'm sure that certain birds, whether they are endangered and that kind of thing, obviously there needs to be regulations to be put in place and they need to be adhered to. So, yeah, when we think about it in that terms, you just got to regulate what you are shooting, or if you are going out to shoot, obviously you rather shoot for the pot, don't shoot for the wall kind of thing. Same within any kind of hunting situation.
In North Africa, there are real concerns about the amounts of birds that's being hunted, because I think in Arab countries they eat any bird. You know, it's not like in South Africa where we eat chicken, and that's probably at a push maybe a turkey now and again. Do we have a threat with birds becoming increasingly targeted for the pot in South Africa?
Yes, definitely. Within Southern Africa, I think especially, so waterfowl and other birds. I mean, there was a whole thing within Mozambique a couple of years ago where wild birds were being traded and obviously eaten then too. And like I said, it's obviously awareness of your diet and what you are actually going to be consuming. Everyone likes to eat duck and everyone likes to eat turkey too. So, I mean, if we're careful about it and we manage exactly what is out there and how we go about doing these things, then there shouldn't really be a problem. We're all here to live the same life, evidently, so we're all part of the same thing in the world, so we've got to do it.
A new study, scientific study, says that parrots generally are facing extinction. What do you make of this?
I think that's a very valid and true point, and that's mostly because of the wild and exotic bird trade. So regardless if it's in the Amazon or through the Congo Basin with African grey parrots, in Australia I'm sure they also have issues of it, and it's these birds going onto an illegal black market trading system for collectors or whoever it may be, and awareness really needs to be created around these things. And I know that there's an article that's coming out today also about African grey parrots being risen up on the CITES list because of that and because of their trade. So we need to think about this, and we need to be careful with what we actually are doing.
Now, of course, we're heading into winter. Birds are migrating, but some are staying behind. Talk to us a little bit about which birds will be leaving and what birds we can still be on the lookout for here in winter.
Okay, cool. Well, specifically in the Kruger area, we have around 200 birds that migrate in and out of South Africa. So there's birds such as moor falcons, European bee-eaters, the white storks, obviously, and some of them go as far as into Asia, some into Europe, some to the Ukraine. And it's amazing to think that these birds, obviously, they have to have feeding stations on the way, and these areas obviously need to be conserved too. So there's certain swallows that only stop off at certain oases within the Sahara and all of that as well, on their way back all the way through.
Well, that, of course, was an interview that we did yesterday with Naturecast and Alex Dermer, who was telling us why birds are so important in the ecosystem. Now, moving on to a topic related to today's theme. We are raised to believe that female bodies are ticking time bombs, but is 40 really the new 30? According to a recent scientific study, more couples are delaying parenthood by keeping their sperm or egg cells on ice for up to 25 years. Doctors say that the growing trend of egg and embryo freezing shows that more people are wanting control of their fertility. Now, to tell us more, joining us here in studio is embryologist from Androcryros, Akona Nkulu. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So freezing eggs and sperm seems to be a trend in the US, and globally there seems to be an increase in interest. Have you noticed an increase in practice here in South Africa?
Yes, we have noticed a bit of a spike in women delaying their motherhood. They prefer to have their children much later. So most people who are in their 30s would like to have a career first and establish themselves in the workplace. And then after that, they would like to then start their families in their 40s.
And there are more women opting to preserve their eggs. And why do you think there is this new desire to preserve eggs?
You know that it's a corporate world, and in the corporate world it's mostly men, and women want to prove themselves most of the time. So now for you to prove yourself and then 3 years later you're like, I'm going on maternity leave, it becomes a bit of a problem. So now, because we can be able to freeze eggs, it's easier for them to be able to say, look, my younger self, I'm 30, I'll freeze my eggs. By the time I'm 39, I would have established myself in the workplace. It'll be enough for me to be able to use them later on via IVF.
But are there any health risks or benefits to doing this? Like, say, for example, a 25-year-old wants to freeze her eggs and then use them at 40. Are there any risks with that?
The risk only is when you are undergoing the whole process to freezing your eggs. Now, as a woman, obviously, every month you produce 1 egg. And if you're not pregnant, obviously, you go through your period. So now, if you don't, what happens is the fertility clinics play on that, not really play on it, but they manipulate the system whereby they give you injections, And these injections basically accumulate more eggs, and then after a certain period, they extract the eggs out. That's when we actually call it retrieving the eggs. And then we take them out in theatre, and then from there onwards, we freeze them. The only risk there is hyperstimulation. That's a syndrome that most doctors can tell you about, where you can, your ovaries can go into shock because of the hormones that are being pumped into the body. But other than that, that's about the only risk that you can have.
And what are the benefits of doing this? I see, as we've seen here, there's a lot of trends happening in Australia, in the US, and more Western. Is there a benefit to doing it this way?
There definitely is a benefit because, one, as I said, the workplace. Two, you can also space out your children in between because, as you said earlier, embryo and egg freezing. So now if you freeze your embryos, you have your child when you're 30, your first one, then you start your career, then you can freeze the embryos that you made from that IVF cycle, and then once you're like 39, 40, and then you start with your second child. Okay, so it's family planning, as well as if you want to be able to prolong your career and make sure that everything works well in your career, as well as cancer patients. Some cancer patients need to do chemotherapy immediately, so we make sure that we get them into the program before they go into the chemotherapy, because we know that it affects definitely your reproductive system.
And talking about price-wise, can you give us an idea of how much this process actually costs?
Look, egg freezing is expensive. Egg freezing, we're talking anything between 30,000, 50,000 rand.
Wow. And there's an increase in this?
There's an increase in it. Unfortunately, the medical aids are not buying into it, but there's been talks between the fertility clinics and the medical aids to be able to cater for this. But there are other options. I'm not sure if I'm meant to mention for other products, but there are other finance companies that do cater for these kind of procedures.
Now, we're talking about this modern-day woman, wanting to start a career, have a career first, and then have a family later. Some women opting to do this at an older age than, expected. Is there an increase in older women actually coming to these labs for sperm donations?
Actually, that's also another thing, because we have a lot of single women who also don't have a partner, or they're not married, but they would love to have a child, or they would like to mother a child. So what they do is they come in, we've got a whole profile of donors. You get to choose the kind of donor that you want: blue eyes, blonde hair, black eyes, dark brown hair, whatever you want, okay?
Wow.
And our profiles go extensively to an extent that we check for hereditary conditions. We also check for what they've done in life, like are they teachers, are they scientists, are they whatever, because some people think that it's better if you take a donor who's more educated, but each to their own. But yes, there has been an ongoing trend that older women prefer to rather mother their own children via a sperm donor rather than being in a relationship.
Well, that's very interesting. Of course, we may see this trend in South Africa soon. Well, thank you very much, Akona. That was Akona Nkutlu, embryologist, telling us about this trend of a modern-day mother and freezing egg cells. We'll now go to Phil for the weather.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, first of all, we get into your weather, and we're going to start off by taking a look at southern Africa. Now, what we're seeing for today is rainfall brought in by a low pressure system. This is upper atmospheric instability forecast for that western interior here. Now, what this is doing is bringing in cooler air, and so temperatures coming down as you look towards South Africa's southwestern areas. In the northeast, though, we're seeing those temperatures coming up after that past frontal system, and in conjunction with higher pressure systems. Really, the rest of southern Africa expecting a mostly clear and a dry day. Now, into tomorrow, what we forecast is that a lot of that rainfall is going to migrate further towards the central interior of South Africa. It's also going to extend north and towards the southern parts of Botswana, as well as some parts of Namibia. Now, if you're going to be there, also expect slightly cooler conditions. But towards South Africa's northeast, this is where we're going to see warmer conditions into tomorrow. The following day, though, do remember that entire system moves further northeast, and for Saturday, we're expecting rain. For today, what we'll expect is a nice warm day forecast for Pretoria there. 26-degree maximums for both Pretoria as well as Pietermaritzburg. But as you can see, quite a cool day forecast in Cape Town there. Only a 17-degree maximum. Now, rainfall in the northern parts here of Central Africa is expected to continue, but in the southern parts we're expecting high pressure systems to yield a lot less rainfall and indeed a lot less cloud cover. By tomorrow, we're going to see that rainfall continuing, especially along the western coastlines of Central Africa. That's going to be brought in again by a low pressure system. It's going to bring in slightly cooler temperatures, but in general, very, very stable temperatures all the way throughout that western coastline. Temperatures remaining warm in the high 20s and early 30s, and continuing towards the interior, another fairly mild day in Kigali, 22-degree maximums forecast for you there. Now, moving further north, that rainfall, as I said, continues towards the Horn of Africa, but doesn't make it far north at all. As you can see, Al-Fajr not expecting much rainfall at all, if it even reaches there. Khartoum, no rainfall, and it's going to be a dry one throughout most of the Middle East as well. Riyadh peaks very high today, but we'll see that in just a minute. First of all, high pressure systems yielding clear conditions again throughout that northern interior, but low pressure systems just bringing in rainfall behind that system towards North Africa. This is where I'm going to leave your weather for now, but have yourself a great day.
Eskom's Group Chief Executive Brian Molefe is briefing the media in Parliament on the state of the national grid system. We now cross live to Parliament there.
A lot of work done through the the education system in the country, so that you have a match rather than a disjuncture between what is produced in the education system and what industry needs, particularly when it comes to, as the SSA report does indicate, the so-called colored and African young people. So it is an educational thing, and the emphasis, therefore, by the government on TVET education or technical education, technical and vocational education, is one of the things that has got to be focused upon. It might just be that really that's what we need. So therefore, in summary, on this was such an important point that's been raised here. In summary, therefore, the area of greater, like in any country, the area of greater potential at the moment for South Africa is the former Bandustan areas. It is the townships where there is very little or no infrastructure at all. So, from the point of view of the national development of the 9-point plan, from the president's point of view, as said here, what the president has said, amongst other things, that we'll roll out the program of agri-parks, particularly in the 44 districts, and has budgeted 2 billion rands for that. And part of that, and a lot of that, will go to infrastructure build, so that you can have the conducive atmosphere.
Innovators all over Africa are using technology to solve the continent's problems.
We looked at all the different startup accelerators, and Hack Josie was born.
And governments are finding new ways to improve the lives of citizens.
We anticipate it will be in a position to handle a capacity of 20,000 logs per second.
On Network, we tell you about Africa's technology and social media scene. That's Network with Ms. Pumela Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
Egypt, in fact, Egypt has become Africa's second largest economy. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni will be inaugurated today after winning the elections in February, allowing him to extend his rule to 35 years. And government is expected to continue to meet with various villagers in Vuwani in an effort to stabilize the situation. Now those are all your headlines. We'll come back with your sports news with Kendall a little bit later in the program. But we're starting off our bulletin today with Renee, and the breaking story there is Netcare 911 paramedics have been dispatched to the scene where a light aircraft has crashed in Pretoria. Now, reports indicate that the light aircraft crashed at the Kitty Hawk aerodrome. Now, details are still sketchy. The government EMS is on the scene, and paramedics are initiating cardiopulmonary resuscitation to one person who has been injured. Now, it's not clear how many people were on board. For the latest there, we joined by our SABC reporter, Sipho Stuurman. Sipho, very good morning to you. And can you tell us what is the details on what happened with that plane crash?
Very good morning to you, Elvis, and our viewers at home. Here we are here in Pretoria East, where a light aircraft crashed at a nearby farm here. It was just taken off from the local airport called Kitty Hawk. It's less than a kilometer away, and it unfortunately crashed here in one of the farmlands here, where the pilot, a 64-year-old pilot, passed away, unfortunately, and his one passenger was injured and has been taken to the hospital.
How many? So how many people exactly have been injured? And there's no people. There's no injuries or serious fatalities.
Yeah, in total, the light aircraft was carrying two people. That is the pilot and the one passenger. And the one passenger sustained some injuries and has been taken to hospital. So there were two people involved in the accident overall. Right now, we are still at the scene where aviation authorities, together with police and emergency services, are still studying the cause of the accident. And they're still studying the scene to establish what might have caused the aircraft to crash. From what we understand right now and what we've been told is that it had some engine failures and it failed to take off, and thus it came down. And unfortunately, the 64-year-old passenger, a senior pilot rather, a senior citizen, lost his life.
Sipho Stuurman, thank you so much for that update there, that light aircraft there with that story. We'll keep you updated as we know more. Right now, let's cross to Renee for more news.
Thank you very much, Elvis. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni will be inaugurated today for his 5th term. The 71-year-old was declared winner of the election in February with 60% of the vote, allowing him to extend his rule to 35 years. President Jacob Zuma will be among the heads of state attending the swearing-in ceremony. Meanwhile, Ugandan police have arrested opposition leader Kizza Besigye, who has rejected the election results, citing alleged rigging and irregularities. irregularities.
Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni will take the oath for a 6th time since capturing power 30 years ago.
It is the end of the old government, the old leader, and also ushering in a new leader, a new president, and a new government.
South African President Jacob Zuma is in Uganda to join other heads of state who are attending. Uganda's government expects up to 300,000 people to gather at the Kololo main grounds. Security is on high alert. The stage is set and security is well in place as President Yoweri Museveni prepares to be sworn in on Thursday. The ceremony here will mark the start of another 5-year term, one that is expected to be of major economic and social transformation. Leading opposition party, the Forum for Democratic Change, disputes the election results and plan to hold countrywide protests. Leon Sanyange, SABC News, Kampala.
The shortage of skills can be addressed by building strong youth entrepreneurs. This is the message reverberating throughout the World Economic Forum, which kicked off in Kigali, Rwanda on Wednesday. Experts say the continent's economic future is in the hands of young people. Liabo Seto put this insert together for us from Kigali in Rwanda.
Entrepreneurship is of growing interest to the youth across the continent. Nearly 60% of Africa's youth is under the age of 25. And if this group can succeed in building prosperous businesses, then perhaps this bulging youth unemployment rate may just be a thing of the past for Africa. In Rwanda, youth entrepreneurship is growing at an incredibly fast pace. Many youth-led and youth-owned businesses are springing up. Wilson Monenjero owns Vera Business Group Limited, which he started in 2012. He only employs one person at this stage and says an enabling environment in Kigali gives him hope that he can grow his business.
Our government is help us to get some dues.
This year's World Economic Forum is intent on grooming youth entrepreneurs. Many say this is the best platform to get started.
I want to be able to network with other entrepreneurs, learn about how can my business be influenced by the digital aspects of it. So there's just so much to learn, so many people to interact with, and see if I can have different opportunities, being with financing or just any kind.
Decision makers are equally enthusiastic to groom the next generation of Africa's global shapers.
We need to encourage our young people to apply the new tools to solve the problems of the present, but also create the jobs of the future.
The World Economic Forum promises to look at how to leverage the youthful spirit of Africa towards creating businesses that can transform consumers to innovators. Diabo Seton, SABC News, Kigali, Rwanda.
Diabo interviewed South Africa's Minister of Trade and Industry and asked him for his thoughts on South Africa dropping to third place as Africa's largest economy.
I think that these rankings have got nothing much to do with who's performing well and who's performing badly in that respect relative. What we've got is we've got an overall improvement in performance on the African continent, and we've got a couple of countries with large populations which have been doing relatively better over the last few years, and that their GDPs are larger than ours in overall terms. So Nigeria is a country with 170 million people. More than 3 times the population of South Africa. They ought to have a larger GDP than South Africa, and the fact that they've got one means that there are more opportunities for South African businesses on the continent, because the continent is growing. If the continent was stagnating, we have less opportunities on the continent of South Africa. Egypt has a population of 90 million people, which is again nearly twice ours. So I think those are the factors. So it's not a relative league table. South Africa remains per capita larger than either of those, and we are also the most industrialized country on the African continent. We have an infrastructure in place which is much more developed than elsewhere on the continent. We have business systems in place, and we have businesses that are interacting with the rest of the continent. That's our value proposition. And we are taking steps to ensure that investors have an easier interaction with us as government through initiatives like Invest South Africa, the one-stop investment facility. So I think that we're coming here and telling people that, yes, we've got challenges as a country, but for example, earlier this week, through the work with business and government, the partnership that was forged there, that was taken note of, and that was a significant factor leading Moody's to keep our investment grading stable. So I think those are the messages that we'll be conveying here, that we're at work, we've got challenges. We've got challenges as a country, we've got challenges as a continent, but that we are working together to address those, and we're making progress on a number of fronts.
Police are continuing to remove barricades on roads which have been set up by protesting residents in and around Vuwani in Limpopo. A series of community meetings have been scheduled in various villages in the Vuwani area. The meetings are part of an inter-ministerial task team led by State Security Minister David Mahlobo to quickly stabilize the situation at the protest-wrecked area.
Mahlobo and the SAPS penetrated the volatile areas to remove barricades. This is where 13 schools were burnt down last week. Police have been monitoring the area since. Mahlobo says more arrests will be made.
We will not hesitate to take tougher action, but they need to come around the table so that their concerns can be heard.
Police used rubber bullets to disperse protesters who blockaded the roads. Vehicles passing through Vuwani were under heavy police escort.
There are ongoing engagements with the king and the president, so we are still waiting for the response, which will come from the king and the senior traditional leaders to tell their people what is it that transpired from the outcomes of the meeting.
The ANC has called for calm and assured that all those involved in the burning of schools will not escape arrest.
Some of the people who are arrested are members of the ANC. They will not have the organization's protection. The burning of a school is an unforgivable act.
A series of meetings have been arranged with various communities in the area. Schooling has been disrupted since last week. Most villages remain barricaded and trenches have been dug to prevent free movement.
Egypt has replaced South Africa as the second largest economy in Africa. The IMF World Economic Outlook has blamed the weakening rand for the demotion. The average value of the rand depreciated by 50% between 2012 and 2015, while Egypt's currency rose over the same period. This means that when translated into dollars, Egypt's economy is larger. Auditing firm KMPG says South Africa's fall to second place among the continent's giants is of concern. It adds that South Africa's economy should be growing at the rate of at least 5%, and at the moment it's bordering along at around 0.5%. KPMG says this is way off where the country needs to be. All 18 of the SABC's radio stations will play 90% local music from today. The decision was made after consultations with stakeholders in the music industry.
A consultative meeting with stakeholders in the industry. The aim to find a way to improve and support local content.
We depend on you. And the day I'm going to enjoy my life is when I see all African languages are catered for in all these platforms.
A move supported by many in the industry. Today, another milestone. The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC, will implement 90% of local music across the 18 radio stations.
We have been meeting all stakeholders. We are not just focusing on the artist. We are focusing on local content. And we are appealing to all independent producers, emerging producers, to cooperate with SABC and assist the SABC to refresh its content. We are saying this is South Africa. We are prepared to work with you. So it is an exciting time for the SABC. All our radio stations, 18 radio stations, will be playing local content. Our television platform, they will also reflect local content.
The music to be played will be across all genres. In addition, the SABC will play more music from legends in the industry as well as up-and-coming artists.
Meanwhile, veteran musician Don Laka says the SABC's decision to play 90% local content took him by surprise. He says he was prepared to fight for the rights of local musicians, but now his days of fighting are over, as the SABC's decision will delight many local artists.
This is a landmark decision, and I was telling Brakeza yesterday that I haven't had a sleep. They nearly gave me a heart attack yesterday when the news broke. While we were in a meeting, and in that meeting I had prepared myself to come and fight. And I think they said we're going to show him this one, that his time of fighting is over now. And without actually letting me say anything, the CEO just announced this. And what shocked me even more was when he said tomorrow, and tears started running down my eyes. I started, and because I've never anticipated such a move that culturally will be liberated within less than 12 hours. So I'm saying today we mark and celebrate the death of cultural imperialism, and we'll see South Africa changing from what it was before into creating all those stars we've been wanting or people mimicking overseas. And this landscape is changed forever, and it needs and it needed a leadership like we have. If we didn't have this type of leadership that SABC has now, we'll be still carrying banners, making noise out there. And Brakeza shot me when I started making noise. He said, we will listen. And they did listen.
In international news, British Prime Minister David Cameron is hosting an anti-corruption conference in London today. Britain is expected to announce the world's first international coordinating centre alongside Interpol in London. We were joined by Dan Whitehead for more on the story.
Delegates from dozens of nations around the world, many African countries, are in London today for this major anti-corruption summit taking place and being hosted by the British Prime Minister David Cameron. Among the big headlines which we are expecting to hear about today is the setting up of the world's first ever international anti-corruption coordination centre, which will be based in London. It's going to be set up with help from the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Switzerland and the international policing organisation Interpol. What will it involve? Well, we understand it will involve the UK's National Crime Agency, who will provide help and support to law enforcement agencies around the world, basically to investigate allegations of corruption, to punish those corrupt elites, and also to recover stolen assets, which will be one of the big themes during this one-day summit. Also being announced today will be the UK's Crown dependencies and overseas territories, who will automatically now share information on who owns companies which are incorporated into those territories. Another really big area which is a hot topic is UK property, and many people have criticised the UK, saying, look, before you delve into corruption allegations and issues in other countries, look at your home situation and realise that there is a multi-billion-dollar industry of money coming into UK high-end property being bought up by countries, by those who are looking to hide their money and so forth, and more needs to be done about that. So we're going to be hearing more details from David Cameron on a specific register revealing just who owns property in the UK. We're expecting to see similar projects also being announced from Nigeria, Afghanistan, Jordan and Argentina and many other countries as well. The British Prime Minister David Cameron will be hoping that these announcements and this summit are not overshadowed by the gaffes of the last couple of days when he labelled Nigeria and Afghanistan as fantastically corrupt. He'll be hoping that the focus is on these major announcements being made in London later today.
Brazil's President Dilma Rousseff is expected to be suspended this morning ahead of an impeachment trial. Brazil's senators are debating whether to put her on trial over allegations that she illegally manipulated the budget to hide a growing public deficit ahead of her re-election in 2014, but she denies this. The marathon debate will be followed by a vote that could suspend Rousseff for the duration of the investigation, which is 6 months. So far, all indicators are that the vote will go against her. We'll be taking a short break, but stay tuned for more news after this.
Defied family and traditions to follow her dream.
Decided that I'm going to prove to them that they were wrong.
The first breakthrough came in when she was studying and touring in Europe.
That was my first breakthrough.
Generations was her first television debut in South Africa.
It was my first gig. I was very excited. I was very happy. I said, yeah, this is confirmation I'm at the right place.
After pain, rejection and suffering, her dream became a reality.
I followed my path, and I'm happy and grateful and blessed.
Join your host, Puleng Mulabati, on Rupilong every Friday at 17:30. Children's rights and health are a priority in the journey of good health.
All children should have access to adequate health care, not only curative but preventative as well.
How to identify ADHD on children.
ADHD is a childhood disorder which manifests with the symptoms of hyperactivity, impulsivity, and/or inattention.
Is breastfeeding still a vital nutrition to babies even today?
Breastfeeding for the first 6 months of life is absolutely crucial.
Catch Health Talk with Dr. Sello Mutawung every Saturday from 9 till 10 a.m.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni will be inaugurated today for a 5th term. The 71-year-old was declared winner of an election in February with 60% of the vote, allowing his term to extend to 35 years. President Jacob Zuma will be among the heads of state attending the swearing-in ceremony. Meanwhile, Ugandan police have arrested opposition leader Kizza Besigye, who has rejected the election results, citing alleged rigging and other irregularities. Now, earlier we spoke to our reporter Julius Mugwambwembwe, who is in Kampala, where the ceremony is taking place.
The festivities of the inauguration are already taking place. Several heads of states have arrived, but I'll give you the brief of President Zuma, who arrived here Wednesday evening. President Zuma was received by host President Yoweri Museveni. Now, from the airport, they went to the State House and they had bilateral meeting. They talked about a number of issues, but they are yet to come out to the public to share with us what the two leaders discussed. And they had a state dinner. And in a few hours' time, we'll be seeing President Zuma join other heads of state for the swearing ceremony here in Kampala. But as we speak now, it's a joyous mood at the Kololo grounds where President Museveni will be handed the instruments of power to take on other 5 years in office.
Now, we know that our president is there, but what is the general feeling among the Ugandans about the re-election of President Museveni?
President Yoweri Museveni has been in power for 30 years, and this is going to be his 5th term. We'll say it's a mixed reaction. The country is divided into two, the people who support the government and those who are opposed to it. People who support the government are the very people who voted for President Yoweri Museveni to come back to office. Now, this despite the disputed election, because we saw the opposition went to court to challenge President Yoweri Museveni's win. Now, the opposition on the other side, they think, okay, the election was not genuine, and President Yoweri Museveni's swearing in is not genuine, but court made it already clear, because the petition was dismissed and President Yoweri Museveni's victory was upheld. So today, 2 or 3 hours from now, he will be getting the instruments of power, the Constitution, the coat of arms, and all that. So the opposition now has no window to challenge the win.
Can we expect any disruptions to the inauguration, perhaps?
There was some disruption yesterday when the main opposition candidate, this is President Yoweri Museveni, President Museveni's major rival, Dr. Kizza Besigye. He left his home and went to one of the busiest streets in Kampala, and then we saw a collision between police and the military trying to disperse his crowd. People had gathered to celebrate with him. They were trying to cheer him as he drove through the streets, but again, he was arrested and taken back to his home, and several other opposition politicians have been held at their homes. Now, this follows the background that the main opposition party, the Forum for Democratic Change, they had planned parallel inaugurations. They wanted to swear in their own leader. They wanted to swear in Dr. Besigye in protest to President Yoweri Museveni's inauguration. So a number of them have been held at their homes. And if by any chance, possibly if they get out and organize their supporters and sympathizers, I think that's when the police will step in, because the police boss has made it clear that they won't allow them to go ahead with their parallel inaugurations.
Now, I did indicate that our president is there today for the inauguration, but who are the other dignitaries that's in Kampala?
Several other dignitaries are here from the neighborhood. Here we have President John Magufuli of Tanzania. Down south we have President Robert Mugabe. But also notably there's President Omar Bashir from Sudan. President of Sudan, Bashir, is wanted by International Criminal Court. And the relationship between Uganda and Sudan has not been very smooth. But recently when President Yoweri Museveni went to Sudan, it was seen as a sign that was meant to calm the tensions between the two countries. So he's here, and government has made it clear they cannot arrest him on behalf of the International Criminal Court.
According to the latest maternity audits, almost 16% of mothers who die before or shortly after birth die from blood loss. A third of these women die during or after cesarean deliveries. And in 70% of these cases, deaths during C-sections could have been prevented. You can see some of the numbers up there. 2008, 2014, 30% increase in the number of deaths there. 63% of these women died after cesarean section, of which 71% could have been avoided. Now, in most cases and instances, the lack of skills among doctors and a shortage of resources, especially in the rural hospitals, are to be blamed. Now, from our SABC Polokwane studios in Limpopo, we are joined by the Health Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi. Doctor, very good morning to you, Mr. Minister. First and foremostly, off the bat, you just heard some of the shocking figures there in terms of cesarean deaths. Should we be concerned about that, Minister?
Yes, good morning, and good morning to the viewers out there. Of course, we are very much concerned and we are monitoring it. Remember, the committee that is reporting this, the Confidential Committee of Inquiry into Maternal Mortality, was set up by myself as the Minister of Health because we need to know what's happening in order to stop it. And we are aware that there are 5 major causes of death for women who in pregnancy and childbirth in South Africa. And we call them the 5 H's. The first H is HIV and AIDS. The second one is hemorrhage. That means bleeding. The third one is hypertension. The fourth one is the health worker. And the fifth one is the health system. Now, what you are describing here, we ascribe it to the fourth H, is the health worker. One has noticed that for quite some time. I've spoken to the deans of our universities because I'm worried. The level of skills of newly qualified doctors is much lower than what I used to know during our time. I've checked some of those records about cesarean section death. I can assure you, I'm not trying to praise myself. I've worked in many rural hospitals in the middle 80s when I started practicing. Sometimes working alone in a hospital, I've never had a single maternal death from a Caesar, even performing that Caesar alone. The bottom line today is that the skills of newly qualified doctors have been found to be wanting. And we know some of the reasons. Many of them do not have trainers because most of their seniors, the lecturers, even at the level of professors, spend very little time in medical schools because they are rushing to their part-time practices in private hospitals. That's the reality. In something called RWAPs or remunerated work outside the public service. So the present medical students are not like me because I was lucky. I had all the lecturers and trainers at my disposal. They are struggling to get lecturers and trainers because they are fighting for those with private practices, unfortunately.
So how do we then address the shortages of resources in the public healthcare sector and also the system, so to speak, Minister?
What resources?
The sources, the lack of resources.
What shortage of resources?
The lack of resources and skills that we need in the public sector.
Well, the main issue here is definitely skill. The resource that is needed here to stop hemorrhage is blood. We have arranged with the South African Blood Transfusion Service that they must have specific fridges belonging to South African Blood Transfusion Service in each and every hospital, especially those that are doing Caesars, and make sure that that fridge is always stocked. That means it's a fridge specific for obstetric emergencies and is put in that hospital, is stocked and run by South African Blood Transfusion Service rather than by the hospital itself. The other issue on skills, I'm discussing with the Deans and Health Professions Council so that a doctor must not be allowed to be released from internship unless they've successfully completed a certain number of scissors, successfully and safely. In other words, to say when you are doing internship, you must do so many scissors during that period which are successful and safe, is then that will release you from internship. Otherwise, we shouldn't. It's one of the new things that we are discussing. The other is that we have got a program called ESMO-E, which I heard the professor speaking about. We introduce it to deal with this question of skills. ESMO-E means essential steps in the management of obstetric emergencies. More than 2,000 doctors have already been trained in the country, and about 4,000 nurses in ESMO-E, essential steps in the management of obstetric emergencies. The other thing we have done, seeing that there's a shortage of skills, especially in rural areas, we've introduced the concept of district specialist teams, where in each of the districts of South Africa we put in 7 people who are specialists, one of them being a principal gynecologist, the other a principal pediatrician, the other a principal midwife, etc. Now I'm quoting those because these 3 because they are directly related to the topic at hand now. So the specialist must be able in that district to identify skill shortages. In other words, a specialist in a district must be able to say there are 5 or 6 hospitals in district, there are 20 clinics or 40 clinics in this district that are doing where labor, women in labor can be admitted, and check the level of skills. And what is the level of skills by the midwives and doctors? Yeah. Once they identify the skills gap, that district specialist must put up a program for training. Yeah. In other words, they must say, we are going to bring so many doctors because they are unskilled in doing scissors. We are going to train them until they are skilled. So those are some of the things that we are putting in place.
Now, Minister, the increase of cesarean section, especially in the private sector, we heard now it's not in the public sector, it's more in the private sector. Why do you think that is the case? Is this more profit over the health concerns of the public?
We think it's more profit, definitely. Well, there's an argument that is about health concern, but according to my analysis, it's more profit. We have got a situation in the private sector where the cesarean section rate is now 70%, meaning all of a sudden 70% of the women of the country can no longer deliver babies normally. I mean, that's quite out of this world, because people have been delivering babies normally all the time, normally and safely. And the fact that the rate has gone so high, I think profit is the biggest motive. We also know that there's an element of litigation where they are avoiding litigation. But it's profit. We hear stories, in instances where they are saying the doctor had to do a Caesar because he wanted to go somewhere. He wanted to be released. He didn't want to be observing the woman in labor for 12 hours. He has got other commitments somewhere. So the best thing is to do a Caesar and finish with that woman and go away. We do hear such stories, and that's why I want to believe that is more of a profit motive than anything else.
Is there a measure to deal with this particular tendency, Doctor?
Unfortunately, at the present moment, no. Under the present system, no. We are hoping when we introduce NHI, the National Health Insurance System, because we are going to be looking at the issues of pricing and cost very closely. We are hoping then we might be having an opportunity to look into this particular situation.
Minister,
as it is at the present moment, we don't really have anything whatsoever on the table to try and reverse that trend.
Yes. Just very briefly, today is International Nurses Day. Your message to all the nurses out there?
Well, I am going to address nurses in Vuwani in a few minutes' time as part of this International Nurses Day. Well, I'm going to remind them of the fact that nursing is a calling. I'm going to remind them again about Florence Nightingale, because sometimes we do find nurses who don't do their work, and they give the employer what the employer has done to them as the reason why they are not doing very well. And I want to tell them that their contract with the patients, being Florence Nightingale's, is not related to what another person is doing. It's a special contract with patients,
yes,
and which they need to respect, because I'm also going to tell them that they must realize nursing is a backbone of the whole healthcare system.
Minister, thank you so much for your time.
Right, we'll come straight out of that chat and go to Eskom's Group Chief Executive Brian Molefe, who's briefing the media and Parliament on the state of the national power grid system. We'll cross now live to Parliament.
Well, it's... Okay, give me this thing for now. Okay? I'll take it down. That's right. We'll reorganize it again when the... There you are. Okay.
Can he not just sit in his seat with the mic?
But it's okay. Let him finish.
That's fine.
Okay. The executive group chief, the Eskom Group Chief Executive, Dr. Brian Molefe, Eskom board members, members of the executive committee, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today is a day of celebration. We have achieved what many detectors thought we could not. As we discuss the quarterly status of the system, we now have the proof points in mind to illustrate the immense progress that Eskom has made in empowering South Africa. We can take comfort in the stride made by our employees, the management team, in turning the corner, our operational performance. Today, I can confidently report that the status of Eskom system is solid. When His Excellency President Zuma visited Eskom last week, he experienced this significant improvement firsthand. He is quoted as saying, close quote, "I'm happy with the progress that Eskom has made. The company is moving in the right direction, and that gives us comfort," close quote. As you know, Eskom has not implemented load shedding for the past 9 months. This is due in large part to hard work of Eskom employees who have implemented high levels of planned maintenance on our plants. This past March, Eskom have achieved another new build milestone when Unit 3 of Ingula Pump Storage Scheme was synchronized to the national power grid. This is part of Eskom's larger capacity expansion plan, which will increase generation capacity in South Africa by more than 17,000 megawatts. We have also had units in Gusile and Medupi power stations successfully complete factory acceptance test, which is the first step towards synchronization to the grid. Finally, the Majuba rail project is nearing completion and should be transporting nearly 21 million tons of coal by December next year. All of this has contributed to the landmark electrification rate within the South Africa. According to the statistics South Africa, 90% of households in the country are currently electrified, and we hope to celebrate universal access by 2025. Beyond maintenance and new build, Eskom has invested much of its time and resources into skill development and education. Through Eskom Development Foundation, we have established the Eskom Contractor Academy, which supports the skills development, enhance job creation, and contributes to alleviation of poverty in communities all over South Africa. To date, more than 1,000 contractors have completed training through this program. As it evident, Eskom is on a direct course towards keeping the lights on in South Africa. Through hard work of our employees, engineers, management team, and power station workers, we have been able to tackle energy challenges head-on and secure a steady power supply for South Africa for years to come. My heartfelt thanks goes to the board, group chief executive, the leadership team, and Eskom employees who have contributed to this success. I have no doubt that we'll continue on this road, which will lead our beautiful nation towards greater economic growth and prosperity. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, just before we go into the presentation itself, I would like to introduce to you members of ESCO that are here today with us. Starting here with Mongesi Nzokolo, who is responsible for distribution. Mr. Mongesi, just wave so that everybody can see you. And then, of course, Sitembe, who just spoke to us. Our chairman is in Kigali. You know, we have the West Africa there, so he is our acting chairman at this point in time. All of you know Dr. Brian Molefe. He will be speaking to us soonest. And then we have Marcella Koko, who is responsible for our generation. And then we have at our side Ayanda Noah, responsible for our customers. To delight our customers, she is responsible to ensure that he does that. And then, of course, Sean Moritz there, the Chief Information, stand up, say you tall, I know, Chief Information Officer. And then with him acting for DEVA, our transmission group executive, that's Andrew Ettinger. Andrew, stand up, everybody doesn't know you, don't listen. And then, of course, ladies and gentlemen, probably the most important person here who was our host yesterday. You must have seen in the newspapers that the Chief Executive Officer had visited staff here. He was on a staff engagement to meet with the staff in the Western Cape, and over and above that to go and see some of the excellent work which we do on top of the mountains with our transmission lines to strengthen them, to ensure that we can be able to evacuate power out of our power stations to come to your houses. Alvi Lester, can you please stand up? That's the boss in the Western Cape. That's the GM for the Western Cape. And then, of course, our spokesperson, who is very much known to you, the Kulu. Stand up, and then and the guy responsible for all the strategy and everything. Freddie, can you please stand up? You look like that chair, so you go there, people must see you. Yeah, okay, I'm coming here, of course, so you better stand up. And of course, for salaries, people who ensure that we get paid every month, our sister, Elsie Pule. There you are, there, please. Stand up. You're not standing, bowing, okay? That's Elsie. Whenever we toy for one reason, for another, she's the one we have to ensure we stop toy-toying and do our work here. So, and then, of course, most of you know our team. Our media team, they work with you on a regular basis. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And without much ado, I'm going to call upon our Chief Executive Officer, Brian Molefe. Today, for some reason, we don't have, we're unable to access the system at the back there, so we... Can you allow the to sit here? Just to do it, I'm sitting that they would like you to do it. I think for the microphone. Okay. Okay, we will try. Okay. Monge? You won't get there. It will. It will. Yeah, this part. Okay. We'll do it from here. Then can you move your mics quickly? Give me 2 minutes to move your mics. Please.
Freddy.
Okay. Freddy here.
Good morning.
Maybe must use both of them like this.
Morning.
Yes, no. I'm sorry, we can't have two mics on because then we can't record. Bottom mic. So just the one mic needs to be on.
Okay, this one. Is it better?
Yeah. Thanks very much.
Okay. Acting Chairperson, as Chose was saying, we were visiting the Western Cape yesterday, listening to staff complaints and issues that staff have. Mr. Alvi Lester was with us, and Eskom was being criticized by some members of staff for the alcohol detection things that we have, where you have to blow in the morning when you come to work. And so members of staff were saying, but sir, you don't understand that in the Western Cape wine is cheap. So those are the issues that we were dealing with Mr. Lester there. And we did say to Mr. Lester that he must change his machines to increase the tolerance levels. As Mr. Koza has said, we haven't had load shedding for 9 months, since August 2015. Average planned maintenance has been 12.52% since August 2015, and I will come back to this number and its significance. Eskom's prognosis for 2016-17 is that there will be no load shedding. There will be no load shedding now in winter. There will be no load shedding during summer as well. And as the President says, there will never be load shedding. Availability, the energy availability factor has increased from plus minus 70% in October to 76% in April 2016. In fact, today it was at about 80%. And I will show this later in a later graph. This is largely due to a decrease in breakdowns, which is attributable to the success of our maintenance program. And we have been able to add additional capacity from just making the machines more available from 70 to 76%. We have been able to make additional capacity available, excluding Medupi, of 2,599 megawatts. So what has happened is, because of the more efficient operation of the machines, from the availability of 70% to 76%, that has added 2,599 megawatts that is available to us now. If you add Medupi, the capacity is 3,279. If you remember last year, at about this time, we said that we need 3,000 megawatts to deal with load shedding. And so that is where the 3,000 megawatts came from. Just the mobilization of Medupi, as well as improving the efficiencies of running our machines, and adding 3,200 megawatts. We have been able to, in the first part of the year, synchronize the first 2 units of Ngula, Unit 3 and 4, to the national grid ahead of schedule on the 3rd of March and the and the 25th of March respectively. Medupi Unit 6 has been commercially operational since August 2015. OCGT energy sent out has decreased, and this is OCGT energy sent out is mainly diesel, has decreased from 381 gigawatt hours in October 2015 to 6 gigawatt hours in April 2016. This has resulted in a decrease in diesel costs from 854 million in from August 2015 to April 2015, from 854 million to less than 25 million in April 2016. This is our typical winter profile and summer profile. The problem that we now have is that between the morning and the evening, for example, at 2 in the morning in winter, which is the red profile, at 2 in the morning, demand is about 22,000, and at about 6 o'clock in the evening, demand peaks at about 34,000. So the demand is about 22,000 and it peaks at about 34,000. What this means is that we have to be ready to supply between 2 and 6 in the evening an additional 11,000 megawatts. But these 11,000 megawatts will only be required at 6 in the evening. And then from there it drops drastically to midnight. So from about 6 in the evening, we don't need by 11 o'clock, we don't need the additional 11,000 megawatts. So we need them during the day, in the morning, right through 6 o'clock, and this increases and peaks at about 34,000 megawatts in the evening. What this means, it means that we actually create excess capacity from about 6 in the morning, or from about 4 in the morning. We start running machines to prepare for the evening peak. And right through the day, that 11,000 megawatts has to be available, but we don't need all of it. And then we will need it at about 6 in the evening. So what we do during the day is that excess capacity is sold to countries in Southern Africa. Our sales have been very successful. In fact, I think today we are selling close to 3 million rand.
Over 2,000 megawatts.
2,000 megawatts are being sold, as I speak to you now, at about midday to countries in Southern Africa. But then the sales will stop at about 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And then we need to go through the evening peak. And after the evening peak, we shut down some machines because we don't need that much electricity. We shut down some machines and then we switch them on again early in the morning so that we can go through the day. So that is basically what we are doing now to make sure that we survive the evening peaks. What is interesting about this profile as well is that although a lot has been said about renewables, truth of the matter is that renewables are available during the day. So renewables are available typically between 9 and 3 or 4. The solar is available at that time, which is really not the time that we need them so much. At 6 o'clock when we need them, especially in winter, it's already dark. Solar is not available. And for some reason, and this is, Deva was telling me that this is an observation that was made at an electricity conference in America as well. For some reason, wind is actually maximum in the early hours of the morning and in the late hours of the night. And during the day, we do not get as much from wind as we get at night. But this is typically at a time when we don't need that much electricity. But at about 6 in the evening, when we are at 34,000 megawatts, the renewables are typically not available to us, and we have to rely for the 34,000 megawatts on base load. We have implemented what we call the Tetris maintenance plan, and I will show you how it works in a little while. It has been optimized to ensure that we do not encounter load shedding. The optimization of Tetris has been done within the following parameters. Parameters rather than criteria. We have set ourselves a summer maintenance budget of 11,500 megawatts. What that means is that we will allow ourselves to have breakdowns plus planned maintenance plus load losses of about 11,500 megawatts in summer. And in winter, we'll reduce that to 8,500 megawatts of maintenance. So that 8,500 megawatts includes breakdowns as well as planned maintenance. And we have also allowed for an OCG load factor of about 6%, and that is diesel. Our month-to-date performance on the 11th of May 2016 has been that we've had 78.1% energy availability, 9.2% of breakdowns, and 12.7% of planned outages. The significance of that is that after a very long time, we have more planned outages than breakdowns. I think the crossover from having more planned than breakdowns happened around between February and March of this year. And that is when the maintenance program started bearing fruit, if you like. So we started reaping benefits from the maintenance program. And so now we have more planned maintenance than unplanned maintenance, which means we have regained control of the system. The system is no longer controlling us. We are now controlling it because unplanned maintenance, unplanned breakdowns have been reduced to below planned breakdowns. In terms of our existing generation sustainability strategy, our aim is to achieve 80% plant availability, 10% planned maintenance, and 10% unplanned maintenance. In fact, in terms of our corporate plan, this was supposed to be achieved in 2021. 3 years ago, Eskom set this target and said we will achieve it in 2021. But I think that we have already achieved it, because I think actually today we may be at 80-12-8, something like that. But we'll see just now. This is how the split between energy availability, planned maintenance, and unplanned maintenance has panned out. In October 2015, we had 70% energy availability, 18% was unplanned maintenance, and 12% was planned maintenance. And the unplanned maintenance decreased from 18% in October 15 to 17% in January 16, 15% in February, 12.9% in March, and 11.8% in April 16. And on the 11th of May, it was 9.2%. And you'll see that between March and April, planned maintenance and unplanned maintenance were at about 12%. So that is when the crossover happened, when we started having more planned maintenance than unplanned maintenance. And we hope to stay with unplanned maintenance being above, planned maintenance being above unplanned maintenance. If in the future unplanned maintenance stays at below 10%, it means actually we have achieved our target of 80-10-10, because planned maintenance we can control. For example, on the 11th of May, with unplanned maintenance at 9.2%. If we wanted to, we could have limited planned maintenance to 10%, but we didn't because we've got maintenance to do. We had maintenance to do, so we could have limited planned maintenance to 10% and have achieved the target of 80-10-10. So I think that we have already achieved that target, and in fact today I think that not because of we reduced planned maintenance, but because unplanned maintenance has reduced further, we are now at 80% energy availability. Now, the energy availability is the thing that has contributed to additional power being available. The difference between this year and last year is not demand, as people say. Because when people say Eskom load shedding is gone because of demand, they say load shedding is gone because of demand because in 2008, this is how much electricity we consumed, and this year this is how much electricity we consumed. But the consumption between last year and this year is about the same. Last year we had load shedding, this year we don't have load shedding. And the reason is because we have improved on the energy availability factor, as well as having added onto the grid Medupi, Unit 6, and now we have Ingula, which is synchronized to the grid, and Ingula, Unit 3, so Unit 4, gets switched on in the evening. That is the beauty of Ingula, is that you can actually decide what time to switch it on and what time to switch it off, because what it does is that it uses water that runs down from a hill and generates electricity. And after 6 or maybe after 8 in the evening, we can use power from the grid to pump back the water back uphill when we don't need it. So overnight we pump it back, and then at peak we release the water down and generate 333 megawatts that go into the grid. Those are the reasons why we don't have load shedding, not the unscientific speculation that is in some of the media. The use of diesel, as I have said, has decreased as a result of improved generation availability. As I said earlier, the costs have reduced from 854 million in October to 25 million by April. Perhaps in winter, the usage of diesel may increase if we experience problems with plant breakdowns. But we think that that is an option that is available to us, and that will make sure that if we really have to switch them on to avoid load shedding, the diesel will be available. It will come at a cost, but it is a cost that we think will absorb. And we think this is where the regulator made a mistake in saying that we cannot recover diesel costs, because we need diesel costs in a winter like this one in case we have plant breakdowns and we need to turn on diesel to avoid load shedding. The cost of using diesel is less than the cost to the economy of load shedding. And so we stand by that principle, and we will continue to use diesel if we have to. Even if we do not recover it from the regulator, we'll see where we get the money. Our prognosis for this winter is that there will be no load shedding. We will continue with a rigorous program of planned maintenance without implementing load shedding, while also minimizing the use of diesel. For winter, Eskom is targeting a maintenance budget of 8,500 megawatts, and renewable energy will contribute up to photovoltaic 800 megawatts and wind 500 megawatts of the total installed capacity of 2,310 megawatts. That is the other thing with renewable energy, is that on a day like this, Although the installed capacity of renewables is 2,310, it is very unusual to get the entire 2,310 from both wind and solar in one day. So typically they only give us about 800 from solar and 500 from wind on a good day. And so that is the other issue. And they give it to you during the day when you need it at peak. But we continue to use them, and we think that the technology will improve perhaps over the next 10 to 15 years. The fact that we're already beginning to install these means that the problem becomes optimization over time, and we think that with improved technology, the performance of renewables will improve. But at the moment, we cannot rely on renewables to take away load shedding, because we need to eliminate load shedding at 6 o'clock in the evening at peak. And those are the hard, cold facts that confront us on a daily basis as we manage this system. So just to demonstrate how the Tetris program works, that is our installed capacity at just under 45,000 megawatts. And that will increase marginally by a few megawatts as the Ngula units become available, as well as, Midupi is now already in the system. So that is the maximum that we have, about 45,000 megawatts. From that, we have to take off our maintenance budget. Winter plant breakdowns and summer plant breakdowns. This is unplanned maintenance at 6,000 megawatts in winter and 7,000 megawatts in summer. And then we add on to that our planned maintenance to come to our planned maintenance. Remember I said it's about 8,500. And so what remains? Okay, so we have total capacity, we take off the breakdowns, and you will see that in this plan, the breakdowns are quite generous because we're conservative about what is going to break down. So we're still assuming that a lot of plant is going to break down. So if we come to less than 6,000 megawatts, for example, in winter, or less than 7,000 megawatts in summer, we're happy because we can do more plant maintenance. But our plan is to be conservative in the amount of breakdowns that we are going to have. And so we take off that, and then we include our planned maintenance. And then we then have to include an operating reserve of about 2,000 megawatts. So between what is available and what we project demand to be, there has to be a gap of about 2,000 megawatts in case something breaks down during the day or in the evening or at peak. We have 2,000 megawatts for emergencies. So we have to make that 2,000 megawatts available. What remains is what becomes then available capacity. So this available capacity has to meet demand. And the black line there is what we project demand to be. So remember this, as long as, in the next slide, as long as we know what our available capacity is, which is that red line there, and from the available capacity we have taken off the operating reserve, and we know what is then available for maintenance. So available capacity minus operating reserve is what is then available for maintenance. We can then start stacking units for maintenance. In this particular instance, for example, That is Hendrina Unit 7, which is it's a very small unit, maybe about 80 or 90 megawatts. 180 megawatts. Hendrina Unit 7 will be out for maintenance from the 5th of May to the 30th of August. So Hendrina Unit 7 has got a slot for maintenance from the 5th of May to the 30th of August. And then we start staking units like you're playing Tetris. And so the next one, we put in Grill Unit 5. And so you'll see that we're going to try and stack these units until we get to the operating reserve. Because the moment we breach the operating reserve or breach the red line, you start having load shedding from maintenance, planned maintenance. So Grill Unit 3 will be out from the 5th of May to the 19th of July. And then Tutuka Unit 3 will be out from the 1st of June or 29th of May to the 12th of August. Kandan Unit 3, it's a small unit. Tutuka Unit 3 is quite a big unit. Kandan Unit 3 will be out from the 19th of June. I can't even see which one. Komati Unit 2 will be out. Letawa Unit 6 will go out on the 22nd of June. And so we continue staking the units like that, like we're playing Tetris. Grotvlei, Matimba Unit 4 will go out around the 3rd of August. So this is how Tetris is played. Those of you who grew up in the 1980s will remember this. We have young engineers playing this game every day with our units and maintenance. And so this is our maintenance plan from the 5th of May to the 30th of August. And you can see in terms of this maintenance plan, we are very far away from the red line. And so we do not plan to breach the red line and have load shedding. Because if we breach the red line, we have... So we have this plan of maintenance, and then we have the operating reserve, and only then do we get into the danger zone. It does not mean that something will go terribly wrong, will not go terribly wrong, and make us breach the red line. When that happens, we switch on diesel. And when that happens and we switch on diesel, and even that is not enough, then I'm sorry. But at least we have a plan. We have a plan, and I do not think that this plan will fail. And so this is our maintenance plan until the 30th of August. And this is our maintenance plan from the 1st of September to the 30th of December. As we said last year, you will see that as we get into November and December and we get into the holiday season, demand for electricity decreases, and so the red line goes up. The space to do maintenance increases, and we will do more maintenance during December. And that is what it shows there. And so we'll do a lot of maintenance during December. Already, we are getting ready for maintenance that we're going to do in December. Identifying the machines, because we know which machines will go out for how long and for what in December already. We're identifying those machines. We're buying the parts that we're going to require so that the outages are minimized. We try and get the engineers, because a unit gets allocated the specific time for maintenance in Tetris. And we expect the engineers to bring it back into operation before, actually. It's better for them to bring it back before the time runs out. If the time runs out, it means that if they run out of time and they need an extra week or an extra two to do maintenance on a unit, This Tetris, there are guys who play this Tetris. They start playing around with it again to make sure that it stays under the red line. The guys that are doing these things are less than 25 years old. They are young guys that have just qualified, bright students that have come up with this idea, and it's actually very exciting to watch them work. I think next time we do system status, they must come to.
One of them is here.
Where is he?
Stand up.
Yeah, it's people like him. Yeah. And now this maintenance thing goes on from the 1st of January to the 30th of March, and still no load shedding. And this is what prompted the president to say there will never be load shedding, because to go and breach that red line, it must really be some act of sabotage or something. It must be, something must go terribly, terribly, terribly wrong. This is a new build update. Eskom has managed to synchronize the first Ingula unit 3 and 4. The first Ingula units, or the first 2 Ingula units 3 and 4, to the national grid ahead of schedule. Midupi Unit 6 was synchronized, commissioned on the 23rd of August 2015, adding 794 megawatts to the grid. Unit 5, draft group run and dry fires were completed in March 2016 ahead of schedule, followed by the completion of the chemical cleaning of the unit in April 2016, which are important milestones towards the first oil and coal fires, leading to boiler blow through, and ultimately commercial operation of the unit on schedule by March 2017. P80 dates. P80 is important. P80, 80% probability. You must remember that, because people accuse us of changing dates, but what people use sometimes is they see the different probability dates and they call it change of dates, but it's actually, this is P80 date, is a specific probability range, which is March 2017. Sorry? 18, sorry, 18. Thank you very much. You must come and work for Eskom. Yeah, otherwise we're going to have to spend the whole week Kulu explaining, must explain Kulu the whole week. Kusile Power Station continues to achieve set milestones on the path for Unit 1 commercial operation. And the P80 date for Kusile Unit 1 is July 2018, and I think it is unlikely that we will miss that P80 date. The construction of transmission lines and the commission of transformers have exceeded the targets for 2015-16 financial year, and we have installed 346 kilometers of transmission lines in 2015-16, and 2,435 MVAs of substation capacity have been commissioned during 2015-16. Since inception in 2005, the capacity expansion program so far added 7,031 megawatts of generation capacity, 6,162 kilometers of transmission lines, and 32,000 MVAs of substation capacity to the national grid. These are the P80 dates. I think it's important to emphasize P80 dates for our build program, capital expenditure program. Ingula Unit 3 will be in commercial operation by January 2017. Now, remember that I've said Ingula Unit 3 has been synchronized into the grid. And in fact, we switch it on as part of the testing. It's not yet handed over for commercial operation. So as part of the testing, now in winter we're going to switch it on. We're going to do the testing at about 6 o'clock in the evening, so that it puts electricity into the grid and helps us through the winter. But it's not yet in commercial operation, and in fact the people that are testing it have a right to tell national control, sorry, today we're doing other tests, it's not available. No matter how much we're screaming and saying load shedding, if it's not available, it's not available because it's not in commercial operation. Unit 4, 333 megawatts will be in commercial operation by March 2017. Unit 2 by May 2017, and Unit 1 by July 2017. We think that it's possible to put Ngula Unit 1, 2, 3, and 4 into commercial operation earlier, much earlier than the dates that have been stated here, much earlier than the P80 dates. In fact, we think P50 dates are achievable. But I won't say what those are. You can go and calculate what P50 is. The 50% probability, which is an earlier date, which is an earlier and more aggressive date. And then Midupi Unit 8 by March 2000, Midupi Unit 5 by March 2018, and commercial operation and not synchronization. Synchronization will be earlier than March 2018. You see, when a unit is synchronized to the grid, it's just synchronized, but it's not in commercial operation. It's being tested. So it's being tested how it will react once it is in commercial operation. And the faults that are found during those testing phase are then fixed before it is handed over to generation, to Mr. Kokoya. And so, beyond the MYPD3 period, we expect to add 5,620 megawatts to the grid. And this is what it looks like. In 2016, the blue line represents generation capacity, 43,193. In 2016, we added Midupi Unit 6, as well as the Sere Wind Farm, 100 megawatts. And so we increased our generation capacity by 894. This year, we will add Ngula plus the 894 from last year. That will give us capacity of 45,000. Next year, we will add some more Ngula units will have been added this year. And Kusilo will come online in 2018, 2,482 megawatts, and that will increase to 47,000. By 2022, we will have 53,389 megawatts. This is something that we said last year, that South Africa does not have a systemic energy crisis. It's not systemic. It was just the way that we operated, and we operated too close to danger. If you take maximum demand at 40,000 megawatts, and I'm telling you now that maximum demand in winter is about 35,000. Today it is going to go to about 34. So today it will be 34, and in winter it will increase to 35,000. The coldest day, I think, is around the 21st of June. It will be at about 35,000. And that is a maximum demand. But let's take 40,000 and draw a line and say we need to have 40,000 available. You will see that we already have had about 40,000 megawatts available in 2016 already, but it was too close to the maximum capacity. And if you have breakdowns, you then go below the red line. In this case, it was 35,000. You then go below the red line and you have load shedding. So the probability of load shedding decreases as we add these units going into the future. In fact, we will have surplus capacity, because 40,000 is not even the number. That is an addition. That is assuming that somehow the South African economy will add another 5,000 megawatts into demand. So we can meet an additional demand of 5,000 megawatts on the West Day. and still be above water. So we are in quite a comfortable situation going forward. I think by the end of this year, we will be comfortable already. And in fact, in 5 years' time, which is 2020, 2021, we can safely say that we will have excess capacity that we will be able to export. This does not take into consideration the fact that Mozambique is building a power station and would like us to sign a power purchase agreement, which we are willing to do, and that is going to come into these numbers. And it does not take into consideration the fact that Inga may be executed by the Democratic Republic of Congo, where we are also expected to sign a power purchase agreement. The opportunity there for us is that we will buy all this power and then resell it and make a bit of cash for our capital program. Make a bit of cash and reduce tariffs. No, not reduce tariffs. Limit the growth of tariffs. I think it's better. That is better English. Not reduce them. Limit the growth. The problem is, in South Africa, when the times were good, like they're just about to be good again, we reduced tariffs, and people got used to very low tariffs, low by international standards. And when times get tough and we have to take the tough decisions again, then everybody is a dog who wants to increase the tariff just to meet the capital requirement to do. Because, people called us names. You should have seen on Twitter during the tariff negotiations what was happening there. This is an update on the two disasters that we have, the Majuba disaster as well as the Duva disaster. Completion of the permanent solution for the recovery of the coal silo at Majuba is on track for completion by end of December 2017. You will remember that at Majuba we already have Majuba operating at full capacity, so this permanent solution is not going to add on additional megawatts. It's just a permanent solution. And then Duva Unit 3, the contractor has been appointed. Finalization of contract details is in progress, and contractor will be on site by June for construction to commence. In conclusion, the reasons we think we did not load shed in the last 9 months is because of leadership at Eskom, both from the board and the executive management, as well as the shareholder, the Ministry of Public Enterprises. There has been great leadership over the last 12 months of Eskom. Additional capacity was added, as I have indicated, Medupi Unit 6, Didisa, which is a diesel picking plant based in Port Elizabeth, of 334 megawatts, and Ingula Unit 4 is available for dispatch at 333 megawatts. This new capacity will be added. The Avon IPP picking unit will be commissioned by October 2016. Ingula will be commissioned in 2017. Medupi will be commissioned in 2020. And Kusile will be fully commissioned by 2022. And we have had improved plant performance, which has given us close to 2,500 megawatts over the last 9 months. And so, we're happy to report Eskom has stabilized and we don't anticipate load shedding. To date, we have not implemented load shedding in 9 months, except for 2 hours and 20 minutes. We will continue with planned maintenance and will remain focused on delivering on our capital expansion program. By the way, the 2 hours and 20 minutes was in August already, so it's not like it was sneaked in now last month somewhere. And we appreciate the support of all our customers. to use electricity sparingly at all times. Once completed in the next 5 years, our capacity expansion program will increase our generation capacity by 17,384 megawatts and transmission lines by 9,700 kilometers and substation capacity by 42,000 MVAs. This will enable us to provide security of electricity supply to South Africa, South African homes and business, powering economic expansion and extending electricity to millions of households. The trust placed on us is not misplaced. We think that we will be able to get the South African economy to be growing again. Thank you. Sorry, I missed one slide. That
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed the slide. This slide is today's performance. You will notice that today at 1800, we will have planned maintenance of 4,018 megawatts. We will have forced outages that we already know about of 3,060 megawatts. We will have partial load losses of 1,710 megawatts. And so total forced, planned and unplanned maintenance will be 4,270 megawatts today at 1800 during peak. And we expect 895 megawatts to return from outages. So there are engineers that are working on fixing certain plant, and so they expect to switch on about 895 megawatts. And so at peak, at 1800, we will have 44,175 megawatts operational. We don't expect to have capacity or generation constraints. Capacity available will be 35,387, and the capacity available will be 35,387, and capacity available excluding gas will be 33,000. Load forecasts will be 32,943, and tonight at 1800, we will have surplus energy of 444 megawatts. So tonight at 1800, there won't be load shedding. And we will go through, and then from 1800, you'll remember that demand goes down. So we are through. Today we are through, you can tell everybody. But they mustn't waste electricity at 6. The demand has to stay below. If suddenly there is a spike and people start switching on everything and more than 444 megawatts, then we will have a problem. But today we have a surplus of 444. What is interesting is that as I'm talking to you now, at about midday, we already have made that what we need for tonight available. Although demand is not there yet, demand is going to start increasing from about 3 o'clock and peak at 6 o'clock. But we've already made it. So we are sitting now, we're generating excess capacity. If you look at the bottom there, surplus at 1200 will be 4,704 megawatts. So at the moment we're generating 4,704 megawatts than we need just to be ready for the evening. About 2,000 of that now will be sold. What were the sales today do we know? Exports from the 4,000.
2,030 at the moment.
Yes. So 2,030 megawatts of that 4,000 will be exported, and we earn revenue from that. So that is just to give you a picture of a day at Eskom. This is every day we try and fight this. Okay. Thank you.
Can you
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Molefe and Mr. Cho. We will take, I would say, maybe 5 sets of questions at a go. We will start here in Cape Town, and then at a later point, we'll go to Pretoria, where we also have another team of people who will be joining us. So if I can get an indication by show of hands as to who would want to go first. So the plan is to identify yourself and the organization, and the questions, you can just throw them. Mr. Molefe will facilitate as to who from his team will be taking those. I see Marcia, I see Carol, I see Bonga, I see Gay, and the gentleman in the center. So I'll take those first as our starting point, and then we'll take it from there. We'll start with Marcia.
Marcia Klein from Mining MX. I want to know, in terms of your projections and your expectation of oversupply, if you can just talk about that relative to the rationale behind any nuclear decision. And secondly, if you can just talk a bit about coal supply, coal quality. And it's hard to see from the graphs, but it looks like Hendrina will be, or a lot of Hendrina will be out of commission for a lot of the year. What that means for the Gupta company, and whether they have paid their fine. Thanks.
We will take Carol.
Thanks. It's Carol Payton from Business Day. Just to clarify those numbers you were talking about, the energy availability factor of 76. So over what period are you saying? Are you saying like a month, the last month to date, or over what period is that 76? And then in terms of what you added, you spoke about having added extra capacity of 2,599 just from additional capacity due to less unplanned breakages. And then you added another 700 for Medupi. But what about the other ones you then spoke of later, the Didiza and Ngula? So I just want clarity on those figures. And then also on the question of sort of risks going forward, how do you see those risks, Mr. Molefe, especially with regards to securing coal for your coal stations? Thanks.
Bonga.
Thank you. Bonga Lulane, ENCA News. CEO, the Minister of Water and Sanitation talk about needing desalination plants which they need electricity to end the drought. What kind of pressure or demand would they need from Eskom? Would that need too much electricity? Can afford that, the cost, when looking at desalination plants? As you said, that there might be help to end the drought. And number two, you spoke about the renewables and the solar not adding enough capacity to help with load shedding. Do you have a time of when that capacity might come through, or when they might be able to generate enough capacity to help end load shedding going forward? Thank you.
Okay.
I'm covered, actually. Thank you.
Thank you. And the gentleman at the back.
plants so that we can electricity and make electricity available to countries in Southern Africa. Hopefully, in the future, we'll be able to build power stations outside of South Africa and be able to help with the electrification of the entire continent. EAF of 76%, what was it on average?
The year-to-date figure from the beginning of our financial year till where we are today is 76.5% average. Now, Chair, if you allow me, I need to talk to this because, and we tend to forget very quickly. In October, leading up to November last year, we had the beginning of the war room. And the trigger for the war room was that our breakdowns was 8,000 megawatts. And our energy availability factor was 69%. The breakdowns today are sitting below 5,000. And our average energy availability factor is 76.25%. And we have unlocked and we've worked out, including Medupi and current operations, 3,200. The reason I'm picking this up is because I read an editorial yesterday from Financial Mail and other newspapers, and they go like this. It is not the competency of Eskom guardians that has stopped load shedding, but it is the decline in the demand that has stopped load shedding. That's what that editorial said. That's part of the story. The fact is, and numbers do not lie, that our energy availability factor plus Medupi has added to the grid over 3,200 megawatts. And that is purely because of the operational improvement that Dr. Molefe and the financial director and the board of Eskom has brought into Eskom. Whether you dispatch that or not is something else. The capacity we have today is higher than the capacity we had yesterday. The capacity we have in May now is much higher than the capacity we had when the war room was invented.
In fact, Mr. Koko, you give Sekonati Manjanja too much credit. He actually says that we don't have load shedding because we employ journalists. And that we pay our journalists better than they are paid at Times Media, and that is why we don't have load shedding. It was quite a ludicrous argument, and I look forward to meeting Sekonati and asking him exactly what he meant. But that was not the case. In fact, if you look at the demand profile, which is consumption of electricity last year and the consumption of electricity this year, it's not very different. And last year we had load shedding, this year we don't.
There was a question around desalination, Chair.
No, before that there was one on Didisa and Ngula. That we did not include them in the numbers.
The Didisa numbers are not included in the numbers I've told you. The Ngula numbers are not included in the numbers I've given you. And this is a beauty, and we are a productive country. And the president is not wrong when he says from where he's sitting there will be no load shedding, because not only has Eskom added over 3,200 megawatts, but outside Eskom and driven by government itself, that we are having additional capacity at not only Didisa, but Avron is under commissioning as well. That adds into the capacity of the system. It's purely Eskom. It excludes Didisa, it includes Avron. And it excludes Ngula because we are busy with the commissioning of Ngula. Now, Ngula alone, And the group chief executives alluded to the accelerated programs. We will be able to surprise many.
Yeah, Ngula is not included because it's not in commercial operation. So they can take it away anytime, the engineers that are still commissioning it. And the DIDISA is IPP, so that's not part of Eskom's generation capacity. Risks. What are the risks of securing coal?
We have committed on our coal for the next 5 years. So the proverbial coal cliff does not exist. We've also secured coal that includes Kusile Unit 1 and Kusile Unit 2.
Did you get that? We have contracted all the coal that we need for the next 5 years. And we will continue to conclude long-term contracts like ANOT, which is out on tender, and we will hope to conclude it by September, October, the long-term contract for ANOT. So, but we have coal for the next 5 years contracted already. And that is what we look at. We just want people that can supply us with coal. We becoming less and less interested in their OPEX and their CAPEX. Let them build the bakeries. We just want the bread. And the capacity that we will need to assist the Department of Sanitation with the ending of the drought.
You know, this is quite exciting for us because what it does is that it creates demand. We've got plenty of demand. The numbers you've seen in 5 years' time will peak at 52 gigawatt. And for us, part of what we do today and part of what the President has been doing when he visited Eskom is to signal to the business out there that the energy security is guaranteed.
So, power for sanitation plants, piece of cake. And the last question was on the capacity of renewables. Or did we have answered it? That the renewables are not counted in the numbers that we're showing because those are Eskom numbers. But the capacity of renewables will improve over the next 10 to 20 years because I think the technology will improve. I just think that the renewables are still at an early stage of development technologically. I expect that solar will become more cheaper and more effective over the next 10 to 20 years. It isn't at the moment. At the moment, solar and wind are like that old Ericsson phone, that big one, or the Nokia. Let me not call the brands, but the old phones, cellular phones when the technology was introduced. But with better computers, better understanding of energy, there will be optimization. We will also develop batteries to store energy. We don't have batteries now that can store energy during the day that we can use at 6 o'clock in the evening when there is no sun. But over time that will develop. And so we think that renewables are still at an early stage of development, and we should stay interested and involved in renewables because, and in fact we're dedicating resources to research renewables. We will allocate about R1 billion into our research and development unit to research, amongst others, renewables, so that we're not left behind the curve when renewables become very relevant. But at the moment, to rely on renewables on a day like this is very, very clumsy. I'm sorry to say that.
I'm going to take another round. Pretoria, if you don't mind, this will be one round before we come, so just prepare yourself. The next round it will be coming to you. I'm gonna ask people who did not raise their hands first, and then you'll be the last one. So I'll go with Wendell, and then the lady at the back, and then UK. We can start with Wendell.
Thanks, Kolo. Just some clarity on the IPP and CIL. My understanding is that part of that procurement allows for Eskom to
Good afternoon. You're with the news at 1 in the headlines.
Brazil's President Dilma Rousseff to face an impeachment trial, and here at home, classes have been suspended at the Vaal University of Technology following ongoing protests.